Okay, the time is 2 p.m. and I'm going to call the Tuesday, April 21st, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting. And for anybody tuning in wondering why I'm chairing, it's because the Deputy Mayor gets to chair the Committee of the Whole meeting. So it's nice to be back here. I'll begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta District 11. We recognize that we stand upon the land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. And the city honors the first peoples of this land and is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. And today we are very thrilled to have so many people in our audience today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. For any reason, if the fire alarm goes or emergency goes, we would exit through those doors and go out to the muster point in the parking lot. If those doors were blocked, we would go out these doors at the back. I always say just follow staff. They will usually get us to the right place and make sure we're safe. So thank you for joining us here today. And for anybody who needs to use a washroom, they are located out in the main foyer. All right, so with that, we will get started and begin with a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Mayor Macon.
Thank you. I'll move that we accept the agenda as circulated.
Thank you. I'm going to close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So we do have several presentations, but before we get there, there is an opportunity if anybody wishes to come and speak as a delegation for any of these items. This would be your opportunity to come up and have 5 minutes to have a say regarding them. So the items that you could talk about are the property tax assessment for municipal, industrial. You could talk about the youth council, the policing committee, or the parkland bylaw update. And not seeing anybody racing up to the speaker's box, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2026 Committee of the Whole. Councillor Randhawa?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the minutes as distributed.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. Who are we waiting for?
We're waiting for Mayor Macon.
All right, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So we will get on to our presentations. The first one is item 5.1, 2026 Municipal Property Assessment Update. Shannon Andruko and Mike Krim presenting. And this is a great one for our youth council to listen to. Learn all about our taxation in Fort Saskatchewan. So welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Shannon Andruko, Manager of Budget and Financial Planning. I'm pleased to introduce our guest speakers for the next two presentations. The first presentation, we have Mike Krim from Tanmar Consulting, who will present the annual growth and market value changes within the residential, commercial, industrial property assessments. And following Mr. Krim's presentation, Michael Menard and Kirsten Coots from the Provincial Assessor's Office Municipal Affairs will present the changes in assessment relative to the designated industrial properties. With that, I invite Mike Krim to present.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having me today. I always appreciate the opportunity to present on the assessment and answer any questions that you might have. And I'll get right into my presentation. As a summary, we now have 12,440 taxable assessment parcels, of which 11,754 are residential. And in that 11,754, we have approximately 9,100 single-family dwellings and somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000. So you're looking at 11,100 residential taxable parcels. The remainder of that 700-ish would be made up from vacant residential properties, multifamily, those types of things. We still have 58 farmland parcels in the city, and we have 628 non-residential parcels. So that's your commercial, your light industrial, and it includes the designated industrial as well. Designated industrial being in the Heartland industrial area, Dow, Sherritt, those kinds of bigger plants. There's now over 9 billion total taxable assessed value, of which almost 5.3 billion is residential and farmland assessment value, 3.8 billion in non-residential value, and I've got it broken down there between how much is designated industrial in the heavy industry, how much is non-designated industrial in the heavy industrial area, and approximately 960 million of commercial and light industrial assessment. This year, we added 242 million in assessment growth. So this is new construction for the most part. We added 285 new detached and semi-detached dwellings. There's several multifamily developments that were under construction last year that are complete or almost complete this year. That's also included in growth. And there were 363 new residential lots that were subdivided and put on the assessment roll this year. We did have a little bit of commercial light industrial, 6.5 million roughly, and that's for the new McDonald's restaurant on the way into town, and some new tenant space at the South Point Shopping Center. And on the heavy industrial side, there's about $37.3 million in growth, and that includes both non-designated industrial and designated industrial. This shows the overall growth versus inflation for the year. So we have two columns on the left-hand side, a 2025 tax year and a 2026 tax year. And at the bottom, you'll see $8.3 billion in assessment last year, just over $9 billion in assessment this year, of which 242 million was in growth, or 2.9%, and almost $19 million in inflation, or approximately 6.2%. I'm going to get into the inflation numbers on the different categories right away. So we're now at a July 1st, 2025 valuation date. That means every market value property that's assessed in the city is based on a valuation date of July 1st of 2025, and that's legislated. That's something that everybody in the province has to follow. The average assessed home this year went up quite a bit. The average increase was 10.1%, of which 9.6% was market inflation. I'm going to show you some other jurisdictions or municipalities in Edmonton area that show that we're following fairly similar trends with increased market values over the last couple of years. So 516.5 is the average value of a single-family home. The average value for a single-family attached home, so a duplex, triplex, is about 374.9 now, and that was also roughly in that 10% increase. And on the condominiums, we're at 234,500, which is even a higher increase than those other two categories, close to 12%. This map I like to show every year, showing you what the changes on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis are. And without going into every single one, I mean, you can look and see that most of them are in that 8 to 9 to 10% average market value increase. Southport Estates was 7.5%, and Clover Park was just over 5%. And that's just based on the sales that are coming through that we have to analyze. Everything that we do is based on market value, so we need to look at the sales that occur, and if the sales are showing us certain areas are going up more than other areas, that's what we have to follow for assessment. This slide shows, if you look at that third bar down, that white bar, on the left-hand side, it says 8 to 12%. So I took 2% off that 10% and added 2% on the other side of it. So between 8 and 12%, that bar shows that 80% of single family homes increased between that 8 and 12%. So that's pretty confined to that 8 to 12% market value increase. Anything above that likely saw some growth, either through renovations that we captured in assessment or potentially new construction, new housing starts, things like that. Anything below that would be areas that didn't experience as much of an increase. This is where I like to compare with other jurisdictions. And what we see here is that St. Albert, Edmonton, and Beaumont all saw increases in that 5 to 6.5% range on their single family dwellings. But Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, Devon, Sherwood Park, and Leduc all saw 8% and above. Going into some of the other property types, walk-up apartments. Fort Saskatchewan saw 5.5% market inflation. Compared to some of the others, it seems pretty consistent, other than, say, Sherwood Park, that saw a higher increase in their apartment market values. On the non-residential side, Fort Saskatchewan saw an overall 4.2% market inflation, and I've got a couple breakdowns there. Downtown commercial was 3.4, the mall redevelopment was 4.8, and highway commercials at 4.3. And with some of the other jurisdictions, Edmonton saw minus 3% on offices all the way up to plus 3% on 3.7% on their shopping centers. The highest one on this list looks to be Stony Plain, that saw a 9.3% inflationary adjustment on their non-residential. I like to separate hotels, and on the hotel side of things, Fort Saskatchewan saw 7.2% market inflation this year. Fairly similar to a number of the other municipalities: Leduc 7, Spruce Grove 8, Stony Plain 6.6, Edmonton being the highest with about a 10% increase on their hotel valuation. And on the light industrial side, similar numbers to the commercial side. We're at 3.7% market inflation, which compares well with Spruce Grove and Devon and Leduc, and then a little bit less than Stony Plain, Sherwood Park, and Edmonton. I'd like to talk a little bit about our assessment review area last year. So every year we are required to review 20% of the properties. More in-depth review. Every property gets adjusted every year for market value changes up or down, but 20% of them get looked at a little bit more in depth. So this is the areas that we looked at in the last year, and that changes year by year. So next year will be a little bit different. With that, we sent out almost 2,500 single-family surveys, and that survey asks for data that we require in order to do our assessments, and it's similar data to what any real estate professional would look at. The age of the home, the number of bathrooms, the number, how much basement finish, how many fireplaces, when the renovations were done, all those kinds of things are on this survey. And we've been doing this for a number of years in Fort Saskatchewan. It's been done for a number of years across the province now. All assessors seem to be going to this type of a review, getting better data and getting more consistent data. Out of the 2,500 surveys this year, we had almost a 68% response rate, which is pretty typical and is excellent. We also had, if I go back one, it's not showing on this map, but we did also send out some condominium surveys. There were 350 of those, 348 to condominium property owners, and we had an almost 73% response rate. On the non-residential side and multifamily side, we send requests every year to all of them. It's not a 20% basis, it's every one of them. 260 were mailed, and we got a 52% response rate. And on the non-residential side, we're looking for income information attributable to the property. Not so much the business that might be there, but what's the income attributable to the property. So if it's a strip commercial, how much does that bay rent for? If it's an apartment, how much does that suite rent for? So to recap what happened last year, and I'll recap this year as well. Last year, we had a similar number of calls and inquiries as previous years on the residential, which is typically not a lot. 60 calls, residentially speaking, it's not a ton. And we had 3 formal appeals to the Assessment Review Board. There was no hearings that were required for the assessment review. They were all withdrawn. On the non-residential side, again, we have a similar number of calls, inquiries as in previous years. Most non-residential properties are represented by tax consultants, agents. So we deal with them quite regularly. And we had 17 formal appeals to the Assessment Review Board. 4 of those went to the actual assessment review. This year's a little different. This year, notices were mailed January 29th, and we, on the residential side, received triple the call volume. Not unexpected, considering an almost 10% increase on the residential property values, and not unique to just Fort Saskatchewan. I attended a conference in Calgary last year. I speak with assessors from all over quite regularly, and Edmonton had exponential amount of call volume as they did in previous years. So did a lot of the other municipalities. So we've performed already several assessment reviews. Now I did have on this slide, because it was done before the deadline, the appeal deadline, formal appeals were unknown as of April 1st, but they are known today. It's 11 residential appeals, which is still not bad. On the non-residential side, again, similar number of calls has increased to previous years with agent representation on most, and formal appeals today, we know that we have 15, which is typical. And I'm done. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Yeah, we got our assessment as well. My husband says, holy crow. He says, phone him. And I went, no. Okay, we'll begin with Councillor Wesley. And just a reminder, this is Committee of the Whole, so they can go beyond questions. They can actually make comments as well.
Sure.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Wesley.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions maybe related to accuracy and equity, if I might. Now, the wonders of having data when we're looking at assessments from July the 1st, 2025 is that we also have sales from that era as well. And I wonder if you can maybe give us some color as to the typical ratios of assessment value to sales value for us.
Okay, sure. I'm going to preface it by stating that everything we do is legislated by the provincial government. Right across Alberta, we're required to follow the Municipal Government Act and several regulations when we're doing assessment. Those regulations state that we have to be within a specific range, median assessment ratio range for different strata of property. So I'll just speak to residential, for example. That residential range states that we're supposed to be between 95 and 105% at a median assessment to sale ratio. An assessment to sale ratio is simply if you're at a $90,000 assessment and it sold for $100,000, you're at a 90% ratio. When you take the entire strata of all residential properties, we're required to be at a median of 95 to 105, and there's some coefficients of dispersion that are within that as well. A lot of statistics involved. In Fort Saskatchewan,
why I'm excited.
That's right, yeah. In Fort Saskatchewan, one more thing I want to also add is all of our assessments get sent to the province before they ever get sent to the city. Okay, the province has an audit department. We have to send that to their department, their asset system, for the initial stage 1 audit to get a pass on it to make sure that we followed all the regulations and met all those qualifications before it ever comes back to us or goes to the city for admission to the roll. So without knowing exactly the exact ratio, I typically try to target about a 98% median on residential properties.
Okay.
So that's where we're going to be. It's not going to be over 100, but it is going to be between, I'm going to say 96.5 and 98.5, somewhere's in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you find that ratio changes much from neighborhood to neighborhood?
It doesn't. There might be some oddities in there as we're doing our analysis and we're analyzing each separate one. Sometimes we'll have more sales in a neighborhood than others, and we're fairly confident we can be at a 98.5 or 99% ratio because there's an abundance of sales that support that, and others we might have a lower number of sales, so we might be more confident or being at a slightly less ratio without having as much data as we'd like. It's maybe better on our part to be just slightly less, but
Okay.
still within what's required by the province.
Okay, so a couple of things that I'm just curious as to whether you measure for, 'cause they weren't in the slides, and I think they're kind of important, is when you look at that mean assessment ratio for similar houses across neighborhoods, do we find that a similar house, typically like the 3-bedroom bungalow, has a mean assessment ratio that's pretty constant through the city? And then the second thing is maybe the vertical equity issue is just ensuring that mean to assessment ratio is not out of whack for maybe middle class or lower income houses versus maybe somebody in a richer neighborhood.
Yeah, and you're probably, if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about the price related differential. Somewhat.
I'm trying to say that without necessarily using too much jargon.
Yeah,
in
and
a
that's
mixed
again
audience.
part
Yeah.
of our part of the audit requirements is that we're supposed to be within a certain. So it's essentially stating that we should be at a similar ratio on high valued properties to low valued properties. We're not underestimating the assessment or the value on the high properties and overestimating on the lower valued properties.
Okay, I can put you down for round 2 and come back to you. You get
Absolutely, boss.
marks. Yeah, okay. Okay, whoops, sorry. Okay, and just before I go on, doesn't want to. Okay, just before I go on, I forgot to mention Councillor Harris is joining us virtually. So, okay, Mayor Macon, you're next. There
Thank
it
you.
goes.
No problem. Okay, so I understand the explanation that you just gave about residential property and the difference between your assessment and property value from a realtor. I ask because we get this question directed to us all the time. How do you navigate conversations where somebody says, my assessment went up $35,000. My realtor says it's nowhere worth that. How do you navigate that? Because I'm assuming you get that quite a bit.
We got that through. Sorry, Mayor Macon. We got a lot of that this year. The navigation starts with a conversation, typically on the phone. Sometimes people want just emails, but most of the time the conversation starts with a phone call. Confirming the information that we have on file is important, making sure that, we have their renovations on file, we have how much basement finish. It might go to requesting an inspection of their property and getting more information that way. We also have to explain the assessment system in that the realtor might be looking at value from today's perspective. We have to try and establish that versus our assessment being from close to a year ago already. So things might have changed in the market that way. Sure. We also have to look at, because we're doing it on a mass basis and not a pinpointed appraisal value every single time, our assessment really is, does it fit in a range of market values? And if it does fit in that range of market values, we're probably pretty close on where we need to be. So, for example, we might get somebody saying, you got my property assessed at $515. My realtor just told me it's worth $500. We're within the range of market values on that property. We're within a fairly tight ratio on that property. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you. My second question is just, and this comes from a conversation that we had regarding assessment. These are based on July 1st, but it is based on the value of your property at December 31st. So what is the process for yourself or your assessors on determining if there's been a change in that 5-6 months?
Yeah, so again, thank you, Mayor Macon. The valuation date is July 1st. However, the physical characteristics date, as you stated, is December 31st. So we have to always look at what was there physically December 31st and potentially backdate it to a market value July 1st. And it really typically only comes into play on new construction. Okay, so a new house, it's framed by year end. that's all we're allowed to assess is the frame, the foundation, the framing, and that's it. And we have to follow that the following year, follow up on it and do from that. So that's kind of where that typically comes into play, is that new construction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Randawa?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for the presentation. Always interesting. I guess I had a question on slide 12, I believe, where you were kind of comparing the percent change, and you had 80% of the homes kind of fall into that 8 to 12% gap. Is that a normal distribution that we see year over year, that like most or majority of them are kind of clumped together?
Through the mayor to Councillor Randera, yes, that is typically what we like to see, is searching for the word, but yeah, that the majority of the properties would fit within that range.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there's about 5% of them that are more than 15. Do you have any, I guess, one, context on what drives such a large change in those homes, and two, what is that range, like 15 to what?
The second part of your question, I don't have the answer to. The first part of your question would be a lot of new construction would be in that 15% and more. So if they were assessed as a progressive house the previous year,
Gotcha.
under construction December 31st, and we adjusted that value to a completion, it's going to have gone up quite a bit in that 1 year time. And that would be on that top bar over 15%.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. You also kind of talked about the increase in inquiries you've seen. I guess you've mentioned kind of anecdotally, you've seen that in other municipalities as well. Is there something you can speak to that's driving that, like interest in residents that are inquiring about these assessment changes, not only in the fort, but maybe elsewhere? Or is this like a trend that we see every couple of years, people start to call in?
Personally, I think, through the mayor to Councilor Renda, everybody's experienced extreme increases in all costs, utilities, groceries, gas. Everything's gone up quite a bit over the years. This is just one more thing they're expecting is going to go up because their assessment went up. And it doesn't always translate to that, as we know, but it's very expected, I guess. So when they see a 9.5% or 10% increase in any 1 year, that drives it to them to the point of, I need to question this more. I need to dig into this more. I need to understand it more. In the end, 180 calls out of 11,000 properties is really not much, despite a lot of, social media posts that are going to be out there and those kinds of things. It really doesn't add up to a lot.
Okay. I'll do one more and then I'll pass it on. The 20% area you mentioned for like the assessment review year to year, two parts. Is that mandated that it has to be 20%, or do some municipalities do more or less? And then the second is, if we compared that review area to the rest of the municipality, did we see any big differences in that review area being like less of an increase than the rest?
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor to Councilor Randhawa. First part of your question, was that mandated, I think you asked?
Yes.
I believe it's not mandated or written in any legislation, but it is considered a best practice in assessment, and some municipalities might do more. I think the typical is 5-year cycle, so 20%.
Okay.
And the second part of your question was, would those areas have seen maybe a higher value increase on average? They would have seen likely more growth in those areas on assessment. The inflationary amount stays the same, but we would have, in that specific area, added more assessment for growth because of renovations, basement finish that we didn't know existed, those kinds of things. But that would move around. Next year it'll be another area, and then we focus on that area, and that area is going to get it. And so it moves around that way.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you have more questions, you can buzz back in. Councillor Blizzard?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the presentation. So the surveys you send out, they're not legally required. Is that true? Like for a homeowner to answer them?
Through the mayor to Councillor Blizzard, under the Municipal Government Act, we have There's a section in the Act that allows us to ask for the information, and property owners are, I don't want to say the word obligated, but it's almost obligated to provide it to us so that we have correct information when we're putting assessment on the roll. We want as much correct information as we can get. That being said, we don't enforce that. People sometimes choose, no, I'm not giving an assessor anything. And that's fine, but they have to keep in mind that they may lose the right to appeal the assessment if they haven't provided that information.
Oh, if you've upped it a lot, they didn't provide it to begin with, they may not even be able to appeal it.
I wouldn't say we've upped it lots, but maybe we've made an assumption or two that their basements developed when we didn't, we didn't have basement finished before. Then there's that risk that they have, that they may lose their right to appeal if they didn't respond to the request for information that we put out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be a good tactic. Well, I just think, why would you, if you've enhanced your house, fill out the survey and give that information, right? But, I mean.
Yeah, and that's a choice that individuals are going to make, and we respect that.
Respect it, but maybe that needs to be upped more to nudge them in that direction. What's the risk? And I'm asking this because I know in Ontario, they haven't done assessments since, I think, 2016. Yeah. So they're kind of frozen in. What's the risk? And a 1 year not doing an assessment might not be a big deal. Yes, you're going to not balance it out as much anymore. But what's the risk if you don't do it for a number of years? The city will still get its money because here's our budget. We balance it out with last year's or the year before assessment. But I can't imagine it would be good to not do them regularly.
Alberta is one of the only jurisdictions that mandates it every single year. And you're right, Ontario hasn't done it since 2016, so they're frozen on values from that point in time. And the big risk is the amount of shifting that would have occurred in that time. Some property values, some property types would have gone up a lot in value in relation to others that might have stayed static or gone down. And when they finally do a revaluation there, it's going to have some major implications with tax shifting, I think.
I think so too. So you said Alberta is the only one that does them annually, so most of the provinces don't?
I shouldn't say the only one, but I'm thinking of Saskatchewan, that's every few years. Manitoba's every second year. Ontario is now going on close to 10 years. I'm not 100% certain on the rest of them.
Okay.
Okay, now I can come back to you.
And yep, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm next in the speaking order. So just the question that I have, because we talk about all the houses that have gone up in assessment, but what about a home that's either derelict or is really not kept up, and their value would be way under? How do you deal with that as far as the assessment?
Through the mayor too, Councillor Katcher, we would hope to have the property owner notify us that there's some issues with their property. We've put the property assessment on the roll based on the information that we have, and if there's information out there that we're not aware of, maybe there was a flood in the basement and they had to remove all of the basement finish but didn't tell the assessor, and we still have it assessed. Maybe it's an unkempt property, it's derelict like you said. Sometimes we can see that stuff from the road, but other times we can't, so we depend on people to let us know those things so we can revalue it for assessment.
Okay, and then a loaded question, because they're derelict or something, they haven't kept it up, they just get to have a lower tax rate, or I'm not even sure what I want to say here. They get a benefit because they're not keeping up their property.
So because it is based on market value, if it's a lower value assessment, it's going to pay less than the higher value assessment, but they're still paying on the same tax rate in the city of Fort Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you. Thanks for the presentation today. It affects all of us here in Fort Saskatchewan. I'd like to ask a simple question about those who haven't filled out the survey. Are they entitled, or are they able to access the information that you have assumed on their property to create the assessment? I guess, is that just transparent and viable document that is available to the property owner?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nolan, yes. Ratepayers are fully able to access how we came up with the assessment and specifically documents relating to their property assessment.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. And I thought that was the answer. I wanted a bit more insight from your end, I guess, into the appeal process, given the number that is becoming statistically maybe more valid or significant rather. So what's the process that you use to either approve or decline what I would assume to be a request for a reduction in the assessed value of the property, and kind of what steps did you take to ensure that everything that you have in your hands to come up with that number is correct information communicated correctly to prevent assessment review board hearing?
I'm going to answer this in two parts because there's a before the appeal deadline review period, and then there's after. So before the review period, ratepayers have 60 days. Assessment roll is open. If they have a question about their assessment or a concern, they contact the city. The city provides us with a list, and we initiate contact with that ratepayer to discuss assessment. And it can be as simple as a phone call explaining the system, and they're happy with it. They don't have any other questions, and that's in a conversation. Or it might progress to, we need to come out and have a look at your property, have you show us everything that you're concerned about. If we feel the assessment is right and we have data to support it through sales and other things, we will let them know. We think it's right. Your next thing is to appeal it if you feel it strongly that it's incorrect. Or we've reviewed it, we think you've got a case and we want to reduce your assessment to something that we think is more reasonable. Most of the time that's the conversation and how it goes. Okay. By the end of that 60-day appeal period, and for Fort Saskatchewan was April 7th this year, they now have, the only option they have at that point is to file a formal complaint. So now it's a registered complaint with the Assessment Review Board that states what they think it should be assessed at and why they think it should be assessed at. Those 11 that we've got, for example, on the residential side this year, we are still going to review them before they ever get to that review board process. Some of them will likely be reviewed to satisfaction of both the assessor and the ratepayer. Others will probably end up at a review hearing to be held later this year. At that hearing, the ratepayer presents evidence why they think it's incorrect. We present evidence in support of the assessment, and then the board members make the decision.
I appreciate the insight. Just a follow-up question, and it would be a statistical number, I guess, and how many percentage-wise of appeals result in a reduction? Maybe this year.
Sure,
it's going to be different every year.
Yeah, I would say, so out of 180, and I'm just going off the top of my head, I don't have them in front of me, sorry. Out of 180 phone calls, probably 50 of them were just phone calls and went away, so that leaves 130, and out of those 130, I think we probably did 50 or 60, so maybe close to that half as being reviewed. The other side of it would be the ones that we said, no, we think your assessment's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to round two. Councillor Wesley, you're up first.
All right, Mike, super cool stuff. So I'm trying to temper my enthusiasm, but I'm struggling with it, to be quite honest with you. When it comes to those coefficient of dispersion numbers that we were talking about before and the price-related differentials, one measures accuracy of the assessment, the other measures sort of equity and fairness of the assessment. Are those numbers that you typically make available to the city as part of your report?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wesley, I would have no problem submitting the reports that I get back initially from the province that identify those numbers. Yeah.
Okay, because I know there's at least one person on council who would be really excited to read those. So thank you, Mike. The second thing is just to maybe follow up on Councillor Burgett's question on people who fill out the surveys and those that don't. Do we do any adjustments? Because, the statistician in me starts to think that there's a little bit of a self-selection bias there, that people who've done lots of renovations may be, reluctant to report that for fear that's going to increase their assessment. Is there any modeling or adjustments we do to kind of compensate for that?
There is. So let's say we go back to the close to 70% response rate on the residential surveys that we sent out this year. The 30% that didn't respond, we will go to the house. We don't get into every house. That's just not feasible. Most people aren't home. We will leave callback cards on the doors, but we can tell typically from the outside. We're looking at a photo that we have. We're looking at our data, and it's a 1970s Pine View bungalow that all of a sudden has new windows, doors, siding, soffits, fascia, the works. There's a good chance that they've done work on the inside as well. So we sometimes will make assumptions that, yeah, the renovations have occurred on the inside as well.
Okay, awesome. And I look forward to reading the numbers. I really do, Mike. I appreciate you sending those off.
Thank you, Councillor Blissard.
I'm going to say if I was the assessor and someone hadn't given me a survey, I definitely would err on the high side for those people. Just saying. So I had someone that called, or I talked to quite a bit. She felt her assessment had jumped quite a bit from last year. And so I helped look into it for her a little bit, you know, what the prices were. It did seem a little high. So I suggested she call the city, who would have you call her. And I just looked back on my records because she actually contacted me. So she contacted me March 26th. The deadline was 10 days later, April 7th. And she was told that, no, you didn't have time to talk to her. She's going ahead with an appeal. Now, what happens in a case like that, though? Can you just explain a little bit? Do you still call her even though she's filed the appeal and try and talk her through it? Is there still an option of lowering without going to a hearing?
To the Mayor, to Councillor Blizzard. So that March 26th was right in the time frame for when we had to cut off the last appeals, because we were working on all the previous ones. And I was going to be on vacation starting April 3rd and then conference the week after. So that's why we advise city staff, listen, if any calls are coming in, we're going to have to go to that formal appeal route. And yes, we will be talking to every one of those ratepayers that filed a formal complaint in advance of any hearing being required. Some of them might go to hearing, some of them might get dealt with just through mutual conversation.
And even at that point, because I know if you feel that, yes, you're right, maybe we did up it a little too much, you can do that even after they've filed.
That's correct.
Okay, now what happens? She paid a fee. I think that's paid to the city though, right? So if she doesn't go to hearing, maybe one of the city staff can answer that if it's not to you. Would she get her fee back?
I can answer that, and the fee is refundable if there is a change in the assessment.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Randall, you were good. You had your light on. You're good. All right. You can tell it's a really interesting topic. So thank you very much for coming out today, Mr. Krim. He's been doing this for a number of years. We think he started when he was like 18, and he has been back here ever since. So thank you. Very knowledgeable.
I've been the appointed assessor in Fort Saskatchewan since 1997.
Wow.
We were just having lunch earlier today and reminiscing.
Great. Yeah, it'll be your anniversary with us next year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. All right, we're going to move right into 5.2, 2026 Designated Industrial Property Assessment. Shannon Nadruko, Kristen Coots. Okay, I'll get you, push your button, make your light red, pull the mic
There we go.
down, yes.
Okay, I like your technology here. This is nice.
All right.
From one mic to another mic, we're still going to talk about assessment. Before I kick things off, I'll point out that from the provincial office, which we are from, we regularly work with our municipal counterparts, Mike being a seasoned assessor veteran. Just last week, we were at the conference he referred to. And one thing Mike didn't mention is he is now our elected president for the Alberta Assessors Association. So I'd point out that he's got great experience here, but also you're in great hands with somebody in our industry.
Sounds like a great commercial. Thank you.
Yeah, he probably won't like me saying that. He's a humble guy. Okay, well, we'll kick things off here. Today, we're going to talk about designated industrial property assessment. So you heard Mike go through all of your municipal assessment and your totals overall. And we're going to talk now about your designated industrial and explain what that is. If you can go to slide 2. Do I control it? There we go. So myself, I'm Mike Menard, the other Mike, and I'm the provincial assessor with Alberta Municipal Affairs. Joining me today is Kristen Coots. She's one of our senior assessors from the linear assessment team, and both of us work within the assessment services branch and supporting all designated industrial property assessment across the province, which we'll talk about today, and we'll get into some details for Fort Saskatchewan.
Okay, so who we are. We are Designated Industrial Property Assessment Team operating under the authority of the Provincial Assessor. Our expertise spans property assessment, engineering, accounting, backed by advanced data analytics, geospatial, project management, quality assurance, and stakeholder management. Our core mission is to prepare and defend the provincial assessment role in a way that establishes equity amongst the province. This assessment role is then provided to the municipality for property tax revenue. Interesting note, and we'll see later in the provincial that the provincial assessment is over $211 billion. So, Assessment and Service Branch. Within the Provincial Assessor's Office, the leadership consists of Victoria Beckham as our Executive Director for the Assessment Services Branch. We have Mike Menard as the Director of SIPA and the Provincial Assessor, and Aaron Allen as the Acting Director of Linear and Data Management. Other managers listed here help oversee the day-to-day operations and efficiencies of the branch. This leadership team is always available to offer necessary clarifications regarding the assessment role issued in your municipality. ASB key dates and timelines. The cycle starts with the preparation of the provincial roll. This starts with the mail out of the request for information packages. The major cost reporting RFI will be sent out next month on May 25th, followed by the industrial RFI on August 17th and the linear RFI on August 31st. Between the RFI mail out and the reporting deadline, our team reviews the RFI submissions and works with the stakeholders to produce accurate and equitable assessments. This includes property inspections, the collection and analysis of reported data. Once the assessment roll is finalized, our team distributes them to the municipalities while simultaneously issuing individual notices to the DI property owners. Mail out of the notices were at the end of January for linear properties and the end of February for industrial properties. Following mail-out, we enter an inquiry phase. We prioritize open communication to resolve questions. Their property owners maintain the formal right to file a complaint if their concerns aren't fully addressed. If a complaint has been filed, our team will defend and amend the assessments as required. This can be in the form of a joint recommendation or a hearing at the LPRT. The complaint deadline for linear was on April 11th, and is on May 9th for the industrial properties. Other necessary timelines are captured in the slide above. This is a very simplified summary of our process, maintaining confidence of the stakeholders, providing stability and consistency of the assessment role, and continuously improving on accuracy, transparency, and efficiencies, and communication is a large part of our goals as a department. ASB annual notices and reports. There are 3 types of reports that are sent quarterly to municipalities. The well drilling activity report, mailing addresses update, and the ASB newsletter. The DI property requisition timeline. The requisition rate is based on the provincial assessor's role and the amount required to operate the centralized industrial assessment or industrial property assessment. In March each year, a ministerial order is prepared and approved by the minister. This order is sent to all CAOs with the updated requisition rate. In April, the Municipal Affairs website is updated with the new rate, and municipalities with designated industrial properties will apply the requisition rate to the eligible properties. The requisition is collected on behalf of municipal affairs and payment is remitted to the Government of Alberta within 30 days of the municipal tax due date. In February of the following year, a tax requisition reconciliation is calculated and sent to the CAOs, allowing for any unpaid balances to be reflected in the upcoming year. So DI property inventory, linear properties. There are two types of properties included in the provincial assessor's role. The first is linear property, and it consists of properties that often cross municipal boundaries throughout Alberta. This includes pipelines, wells, telecom, cable distribution, electric power systems, electric power generation, and railway. DI property inventory, industrial properties. Industrial property includes all facilities regulated by the Alberta Energy Regulator, the Alberta Utility Commission, and the Canadian Energy Regulator. These include well sites, batteries, compressor stations. And major plants are listed in the Machinery and Equipment Assessment Minister's Guidelines and include oil sands, gas plants, pipeline terminals, pulp and paper and lumber mills, refineries, and petrochemicals. These properties are now included in the centralized industrial property assessment system managed by the ASB.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, now that you have an idea of exactly what DI property is, you can see it's a wide range of properties that we're looking at. The map in front of you for the city of Fort Saskatchewan, you can see where these types of properties are located. I'm sure you have a very good idea of this already. But in pink, you will see the wells and where they're scattered throughout the city. Then in blue, you can see the facilities. And in green are the pipelines that go across the municipality. So you can see overall, these are where these are located and where you'd expect them to be located based on visual representation. Now, in terms of the overall assessment, you can see that year over year, the assessment totals for DI property have been relatively stable for Fort Saskatchewan and pretty consistent with the province as a whole. So if you look at each of the individual categories, you can see here the 2024 tax year, 2025, and 2026. So we're showing a 3-year sample or trend of the last 3 years. And you can see that each of the categories that we've broken down into subcategories, there was an increase in each of the different groups, some larger than others, but overall you can see the difference change in the difference column as well as the percent change column on the right-hand side. So the reason we break them up like this is based on the linear categories that Kristen just went over, as well as the assessment classifications, assessment classes that are defined in the Municipal Government Act. So you can see that we have farmland broken out separately. Yes, we do have some farmland on DI properties, the majority of which is assessed by your municipal assessor. But if there is excess farmland within a parcel of land that is classified as a DI property, it gets included in the overall assessment. So you can see machinery and equipment is your largest group, and that's fairly typical. When you're looking at DI property, M&E makes up the largest portion for most municipalities. Then you have a subcategory of buildings and structures. Those are broken out separately because they fall under the non-residential class as opposed to the machinery and equipment assessment class. And then you can see the overall DI industrial total. So that includes the 3 categories above. Last year at 1.969, this year at just over $2 billion in terms of the industrial side. Then below that, the next 6 or 7 categories are those linear groups that we talked about. Each linear property type has its own assessment classification code and is calculated differently, and also has its own assessment year modifier. So naturally, we break these out and show where the changes were in each of those subclasses of linear property. Again, that's cable, electric power generation, gas distribution, pipelines, railways, telecom, and well properties. So again, if you look at the 2026 column right in the middle of that graph, you can see the general difference that occurred both from a dollar value wise and a percentage wise as well. So if I draw your attention to the bottom right-hand side, you'll see that overall your assessment for DI property increased about $65 million, or about a 3% change, 3.05% overall. The majority of which is inflationary. Mike did a good job breaking down your growth versus inflation. And the majority of this change is inflationary. However, there was some growth changes as well. I won't go over all of them, but just some for your information. There was roughly 80 million added to the Plains Midstream gas plant for the frac debottleneck project. The construction was completed on the Dow Diamond Center maintenance and repair operations buildings. The Dow Path to Zero was restarted and construction is seeing good progress there. We inspected the Dow Path to Zero site in November of this past year. However, you have to keep in mind that that assessment won't hit your roll until 2028 to 2030 when it becomes operational. So one unique thing about DI property compared to market value property is that there's no progressive assessment. It's essentially an all or none situation where once a property becomes operational, it then becomes fully assessable. Prior to that, the land and buildings can be assessed, but the linear property or the M&E property, the regulated components, are not assessed until complete. So in general, municipalities will see fairly stable assessments, and then when major projects are complete, they'll see a bit of a jump in the assessment base, which you all, I'm sure, are eager for and actively waiting for this Dow Path to Zero project to finish in the next few years. Another project was the Linde Clean Hydrogen Plant. Again, the timeline for that is roughly 2028 as well. It's, as you imagine, lined up closely with the Dow Path to Zero. Although in our discussions with them, we do understand there could be some processes coming online even prior to the Path to Zero to make sure things are capable of use and up and running efficiently before they tie into the Dow Path to Zero. So it likely, the majority of it won't come online until the 2028 to 2030 timeline as well, like the Dow Path to Zero. And then we also saw a decrease with the Dow polyethylene plant. There was one of the train lines, the furnaces went down and had to be completely removed. So that was removed and replacement is currently in the works. But as you'd imagine, with any sort of property assessment, if it's no longer there physically or removed from the property, it no longer gets assessed. So this is one train line within a 3 train line unit, and that specific line being out of service means the assessment was removed for that portion of the property. So those are just some general projects that we saw year over year in terms of properties within Fort Saskatchewan. And now in terms of the province as a whole, this chart serves as a high-level summary of what the trend is looking like for designated industrial property across the province of Alberta. Last year, there was about a 4% increase across the province. This year, we saw an increase of about 3%. So 3.3% of an overall increase in DI property across the province. And if you recall in the previous slide, you all are at about 3.05%. So pretty close to the overall average and trends that we're seeing typical across the province. We do break it up into the 2 subcategories, so you can see that linear property saw a slightly higher increase this year compared to industrial property. Industrial was about a 2.5% increase across the province, linear about a 4.5% increase. The assessment model review. This is something that is of great interest to a lot of different stakeholders. And in previous sessions, we've kind of had to give the update of things are in the works, but we'll let you know when things progress. I'm happy to say now we can actually give some concrete updates, which is nice for me for a change, and I can answer questions that you might have about it. So we just had minister decisions. That was 2 months ago in terms of key decision points that minister had to make on the direction the assessment model review would go. Primarily, that was about things such as a locational factor, the floor and ceiling that may or may not be present in terms of regulated depreciation. Also, are we looking at a more streamlined approach for construction cost reporting, major projects, or are we looking for a more broad-based approach? And so minister went through the recommendations and a number of decision points that were put to him, and he made those decisions for us 2 months ago. So that gave the green light to our policy team, who's located within municipal affairs, to continue with the model review. which, as I said, has been a bit stagnant the past 6 months to a year because of those decision points. And now the models will continue to move forward and get updated. So you can see on the chart in front of us, we're right at the beginning of the stage 3 approach. This plan goes back several years to 2022 or 2023 when it was first written. And now we're right into the stage of updating these models. The review of foundational policies is complete, as I said, and Minister has made those key decision points to allow policymakers to move forward. And now we will be moving in June of 2026, so June of this year. The reviews will begin for telecom, for electric power, and for railway properties. And then the reviews will begin for pipeline, well, and machinery and equipment in December of this year. So this will be a several-month process, and a number of property types will be working together in conjunction. But that's the general timeline of when these model reviews are happening. They'll get together a number of stakeholders and experts to come to their table and give their opinions on how these models could and should be updated so that they meet the pillars of the model review. Those 3 pillars, again, are that it's an efficient process, it's an equitable process, and that it's transparent. Some of the critiques that have happened for previous models is that it was unclear what is exactly included or not included in any given model, how those numbers were determined, because a lot of these models go back 20 plus years in terms of determining those values. And then also just that it's an efficient process. Instead of looking at smaller items that maybe don't add a lot of value, trying to find ways to look at where the true sources of value are and making sure those values can be captured in an efficient way. So those are kind of the 3 pillars that the model review is looking at. And finally, I'll leave you with some expectations. As I said, we work very closely with municipal assessors across the province, like Mike and Tanner that you have here. But we also want to work closely with our municipal stakeholders. So people directly within Fort Saskatchewan. We had a meeting last week with Troy and the team, and we like to keep that up. We want to keep an open line of communication so that you know that we're your assessor, just like Mike is your municipal assessor, we're your provincial assessor, and we're here to serve you and make sure you have a good understanding of your assessment. And if you don't, we want to clarify those points for you. So please reach out anytime, as you've been doing in the past. Keep doing that practice as we go forward so that we can keep the communication line open and keep our collaboration moving forward. And then some key takeaways I'll leave you with before we open it up to questions. This year, like previous years, the DI property assessment base was fairly stable. That's the nature of regulated assessment, is we don't see dramatic swings in assessment typically. So again, the year-over-year change was 3.3% in the positive direction across the province, 3.05% for Fort Saskatchewan specifically. The overall impact is significant that our assessment office does. We look after about $219 billion in annual property assessment. That accounts to about $2.2 billion in tax revenue for our municipal partners and an additional $420 million for the Alberta School Fund Foundation. And then continued enhancements, not only the assessment model review, which I mentioned, but a number of best practices and approaches we're looking to take to streamline our operations and continue to build in those efficiencies to ensure we have equitable and correct assessments, not only for Fort Saskatchewan, but across the province for DI property. So with that, Krista and I are finished, and we would like to open it up to your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to let Councillor Harris go first. So even though you'll see him up there, the camera when you're looking at him is back here.
Got it.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Thanks very much. Stimulating presentation as always. I used to deal with this sort of stuff in a previous career, and obviously it's an important category. I think my colleagues would probably be interested when you're looking at linear and power and pipe and those classes. Are you primarily getting capital cost inputs from industry to compile your assessment figures in those regards?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of different ways that it's done. To put it simply, when there's designated industrial property, there's essentially 2 streams. There's a regulated rate base, and then there's a capital cost reporting base. So anything that essentially is capable of having a rate the guidelines and regulations have attempted to do so. I mentioned that the rates are greatly out of date, and that's where the model review comes into play. And so there'll likely be additional properties that are standardized and have a rate put on them. But essentially, the smaller or data-driven properties have a rate that's through the minister's guidelines. There's a linear assessment guidelines and a machinery and equipment assessment guidelines, and a specified rate depending on the specifications and characteristics of that property. Then once a property gets larger and out of the scope of regulated rates, that's where reported cost properties come in. So that's where it's a more complex one-off property, and we receive reporting from the company and then work toward going through that reporting to determine exclusions so that we have essentially a starting base total cost, and then we make the required exclusions using the construction cost reporting guide to end up at an assessable cost, which then goes through the calculation just like the regulated rate. It has depreciation applied, it has the assessment year modifier applied, and you get your end assessment. So to put your question simply, there's two streams and it depends on the property type.
Okay, that's good. Well, obviously we're dealing with highly technical data, and I'm sure you're all very well versed with that. The other question I have, just a second question, is we hear a lot about stranded assets or wellheads that are no longer functioning. Companies have walked away from them and whatnot. How are you treating those from an assessment standpoint? Let's say company X goes bankrupt and they're not producing from field, if you will, in an oil area. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, another great question.
I presume we don't have any.
That's right. It's typically more in rural municipalities that we see that. There's a fair bit in southern Alberta, as you'd imagine, in some of the dried up fields that don't have the production that they once did 30 to 50 years ago. Previous to this, it was handled in two different ways, unfortunately. The linear assessment side had a clause within the guidelines to allow the assessor, or I should say direct the assessor, to remove the assessment for such properties if they were on what's called the Alberta Energy Regulator insolvency list. And so if a company was in receivership or bankruptcy and put on this list, it meant they're now working with the Orphan Well Association and the Alberta Energy Regulator to clean up those sites. But in general, those companies were likely not paying taxes on those sites for even a few years before that bankruptcy in many cases. So on the linear side, there's a clause in the minister's guidelines to remove the assessment to make sure that ongoing liability doesn't continue to pile up on the municipality. The machinery and equipment side was different. However, I'm happy to say that it was changed last year. So now it is the same. Previously, M&E assessments would continue. There would be some removals if there was a physical disconnection or a physical equipment removal. The assessor could recognize that. But if the well, so to speak, was still connected and capable of use and a building was still on site, then the assessor was still required to assess that property because it's regulated assessment, not market value. So we did have some municipalities, especially southern municipalities, that would have liabilities accumulating, and they would reach out to the government saying, why the heck are you assessing this company? They haven't paid us in 5 years and we have to keep writing it off. And so the province responded to that and updated the minister's guidelines for machinery and equipment to match the linear guidelines last year. And so now if a company is in that situation, they are removed from the assessment and no longer receiving that ongoing assessment. Now, if it's sold and the site becomes reactivated, or it's now owned by a viable company, then it gets reactivated and put back on the assessment, both on linear and on the industrial sides.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the answers to those questions.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the presentation. I was just looking at the industrial numbers for other Mike, who and I maybe I'll paraphrase you, is a superstar assessor, right?
That's right.
And Mike, the superstar assessor, he kind of looked at industrial properties and said they went up by about 3.7%. And then other Mike, you, says they go up by 3.05%. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like a 20% differential. Is there a concern or potential for adjustment? Just to, are we ever concerned that that 3% is maybe a little bit low?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. So if you look at the total assessment, I made note of it when Mike had his numbers up there. Maybe I'll be other Mike and he can be original Mike. His numbers matched our numbers in terms of the figure of 2.198 billion in the total assessment. He did have a total industrial, which included a non-dip as well as dip. A bit of a confusing term there, but the designated industrial property, there's also municipal industrial, which is rolled up into a larger industrial total. So those ones won't match, and then the percentage will be different, as you'd imagine, because more properties are included in the overall industrial total that we don't have eyesight on. We're just looking at the DI property. In terms of the overall increase, really it depends on if there's growth, if there's construction and new projects in a given year, and then if there's any removals. So in any given year, we're always going to see removals from the assessment. If you look at an individual property, industrial, or an individual company, you'll have some companies that have slightly lower assessments in a given year, some that have slightly higher based on removals that may have occurred. Or maybe it's a company that has a lot of aged assets and they're no longer producing or taking some offline. And then if you have a company that's building things that are shiny and new, naturally their assessments go up pretty dramatically. So in any given year, you'll have companies that increase, some that go up, some that go down. And it also depends on that yearly modifier, which is essentially your inflation, your assessment modifier to adjust the historic values up to the current values. Even in regulated property, they're still adjusted for inflationary costs. The way it's done with DI property is based on Statistics Canada data that comes out. Things like steel prices, copper, telecommunication, concrete construction metrics, and that determines what's the difference in the modifier in any given year. So typically we see increases in the modifier, maybe 3 to 5%. Every once in a while you'll see a modifier jump up 11%. Sometimes it'll be a slightly negative number. We saw that for railway one year, but in general 3 to 5%. This year most modifiers were right around 3%. So in terms of is the number too high or too low, it really just depends on what new construction occurred in the municipality, what removals occurred, and then what inflationary adjustment we had to make.
Okay, but just I've other questions, but just Mike's number and your number should be pretty close in sync. One would expect that. Yep. Just getting back to maybe I'll word it in terms of a hypothetical furnace rather than the actual furnace that you mentioned. Is it just thinking of that example? Furnace goes offline, and now it's off the assessment. The entire facility is now down, and so it doesn't become part of the assessment. But let's say the furnace is just offline for a very short period of time, just happens to cover the time when you're doing your assessment. Does that furnace being down for a very short time, let's say weeks or a month, then impact the industrial assessment across years?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor. The short answer is it could. It depends on the situation. So if you have something where a company is doing a planned turnaround and they're just taking equipment offline, we don't remove the assessment for those situations. So even if it was offline temporarily, if it's a maintenance update or a temporary shutdown, that's different than an impairment. So if there's something that occurs, I'm thinking in Wood Buffalo a few years ago, we had a pipeline explosion and it caused a number of compressor stations to come offline, which we had to adjust on the assessment, as you'd imagine. So much like the furnace project here that I mentioned, the total facility or even the subunit isn't taken offline. It's just the equipment and the process that's down because of that removal. So the assessment gets adjusted for that. So if you think of the Dow example that I gave, overall Dow's assessment decreased about 1% year over year, 1.4%, I believe. So they did have an impairment and a significant impairment, but you got to keep in mind that they have massive properties across your municipality. That specific example, there's 3 train lines and only one of the 3 lines came off. So the other 2 were still running. And that's in one small plant that's within a bigger plant. So the overall Dow assessment was still very stable. It was just one specific item within a certain subset that was removed. So if there's an impairment that causes a piece of equipment to come offline, damage or removal, that's when it gets adjusted on the assessment. But if it's a typical maintenance item, then it typically isn't removed from the assessment.
And I'll just ask, maybe, can I one more question and then I'll go back in the cycle?
Okay.
I'll make it very fast.
Okay.
Who decides on the impairment? Is that self-reported or is it determined by you?
In short, the assessor decides. So the company will report information. They'll tell us their cost, their spending for the year. They'll also inform us of any impairments or removals that occurred in the year. And then it's at the assessor's professional judgment to determine, is that right? Is this an actual removal? Is this a temporary maintenance item that really shouldn't be adjusted? Remember, we're looking at capital costs, so we're not looking at operational changes. We don't assess them for their operational costs in a given year, so we're not going to deduct the assessment for an operational change either. It's capital cost to the real estate of the property. So in short, it is the assessor that makes the change. Often we have to do a physical inspection to confirm. In the case of the Dow, we did do an inspection on that one in November, so we could get eyes on the specific piece of equipment and make sure we know this should be removed from the assessment. Because as you can imagine, there's an incentive for a property owner or a tax agent to want a lower assessment that automatically results in a lower tax base for the most part. So we like to hold them accountable and to a very strict standard, proving and supporting it with documentation if there's any removals to an assessment.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Councillor Andawa.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mike and Kristen. Thanks for coming out all the way here. I wanted to kind of dive into one of the key takeaways you had on, I believe, your second last slide around stability. Is that, I would say, a goal for your organization to like create stability in assessments like going forward? Or like, can you give me some color into why you kind of, dove into that one?
Yeah, absolutely. That is, I would say it's the nature and the intent of government in terms of regulated assessment. So for the most part, any property in the province that can be valued on a market value assessment is done that way and ought to be done that way. If there's a market value for it, it should be assessed on a market value because that's very digestible to the average person on how you come up with that assessment. When we look at something like, I'll go back to our Dow example, or a pipeline or an oil sands project, there really isn't a market for that. It's not a true real estate market where you have a sale of the property. You might have a company that sells assets, but in general, there's goodwill, there's debt obligations, there's so many things within that sale that you can't pinpoint the value of the real estate itself. So that's where government stepped in and made a regulated approach as opposed to a market value approach. And the idea with the regulated assessment is to establish, for other things as well, stability across the board. And that's also where the depreciation tables come in. In a market value world of depreciation, typically you start at 95%, maybe 99%, and you drop off to a salvage value of maybe 15, 10% at the end. Government made deliberate choices to have a floor and a ceiling with depreciation on regulated assessment so that the assessment is certainly lower in the initial years, but you maintain that assessment much longer in the later years when properties are aged. I'm thinking of Dow, for example, which a lot of those assets are 30 plus years old, but they still have a 40% floor as opposed to a 10% salvage value when it comes to depreciation. So to your question, I would say that certainly stability is one of the factors that we look at. Equity, correctness are other ones, and transparency, but stability is certainly something we strive toward.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand it if I base this presentation to the other Mike's previous, right? Like we have homeowners that I guess don't see that stability in terms of that their assessments, if they're 80% of the homeowners are going 8 to 12%. But we look at the big industrial companies and the regulated market creates stability that results in a lower increase. Like, is there any concern that this regulation and structure, I guess, suppresses these values compared to homeowners?
Yeah, that's a fair critique, and that's a common critique that you point out in terms of market value versus regulated value, and essentially the trade-offs. So certainly that there are larger swings typically in market value, And that is something that you have to grapple with at times. But in terms of the regulated process, government did make choices to have that sort of stable approach as opposed to a more market value approach. And you're right, there is going to be differences when you compare market value versus the regulated side.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Blizzard, last in the queue.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm going to go back to your Dow example just because it's been the one discussed. So what happens, you said in November it was removed from the assessment. So that means the assessment's lower. But you also mentioned that they're looking at replacing it. So is that then flagged to get re-looked at some point? Or do they give a timeline for, when somebody has something like this that, hey, we removed it, but we know they're planning on bringing it back? Is it looked at again in 6 months? Or do you wait until Dow self-reports a company, let's say?
That's a great question, Councillor. So it was removed earlier in the year. We did the inspection in November. We have the condition date slightly different. So again, a bit of a theme here that regulated is a little different than market value. We have a condition date of October 31. So you heard Mike say that his condition date is December 31. That's consistent for all market value. On the regulated side, we have October 31. So we get a snapshot of then. And we learned about this impairment in the summer. And then we did a physical inspection in November to confirm. In terms of tracking, yes, we are very diligent about that, making sure that we flag the property with an annual narrative code so that we know to investigate the property annually. In speaking with this property owner, they were motivated to replace it as soon as possible. My understanding is they need to source parts from Europe, I believe Germany, and there was a bit of a backlog in getting that replacement. But I understand they're highly motivated to get that back up and running to get their processes fully up to speed. So we'll certainly follow up with them again on the next request. We send our next RFI, actually next month, May 11th, I believe is the mail out date, May 25th. So we're sending our major cost RFI end of next month, and then they have 60 days to respond. And we'll be looking at that item with a particular set of eyes to make sure that they're reporting on it. Even if there is no change, we still want them to confirm they've considered it and they're not just forgetting about it. Because as you can imagine, sometimes companies, intentionally or not, will forget about things. So it's the duty of the assessor to track it and make sure that we follow up regularly.
Okay. And just one more question, and this is more curiosity on my part. I'm looking at the map you had up that showed the wells and industrial properties, pipelines, and in southwest corner of the map, there's 2 blue dots that I know are in a residential area. What would the kind of industrial property would be there? I think it was page 10 of it was like halfway through. Yeah, right there. So see on the 2 blue dots that are kind of on the west side or
that's a great observation, Councillor. So typically what those are ATCO metering stations, which you might notice in residential neighborhoods to distribute natural gas. So those are regulated and part of the DI property assessment.
Okay.
So I think what we might do in future presentations is blow up some of the bigger assessments so that you can see where your major facilities are compared to your smaller ones. Like those ATCO ones are probably assessed around $50,000, maybe upwards of $500,000 for some of the bigger ones. But that's typically what those would be.
Okay, I saw them in the middle of residential and I'm thinking, what is there that could be industrial? But that explains it. Thank you very much.
Good eye.
Okay, thank you. We're still on round 1, so I'll go to Councillor Nguyen.
There's one of those in my backyard. I actually make 10,000 off it every year.
Good.
That was one of my questions, too. I decided today if I waited long enough, most of my questions would have been asked already, so it actually seemed to happen. But I just on the note of this map, I would love to see a more comprehensive map of this type. And in the last term of 4 years, I didn't really see a detailed industrial zone map for tax assessment purposes. So that gives us quite a bit of insight into where the industrial pockets are, especially seeing as there's some embedded within residential and commercial sites. It looks like the frequency of them accelerates as you move north in Fort Saskatchewan. So maybe just something to have in the pocket for next time. I guess I'll ask a similar question regarding appeals that I did last time too. the original Mike, and everybody's got a different take on it, which is just what's the appetite of industry to appeal a tax assessment. If you look at residential, they're not monetizing the property in the way that industry is monetizing the property, and really it affects the bottom or bottom line net revenue of that plant to produce. I would assume they forecast this type of growth, seeing as you've mentioned it's been consistent over the years. So do you see an escalated number of appeals that come through in industrial property tax assessments over, I guess, maybe as an anomaly over residential counterparts?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to pass it to Kristen to talk a little bit about the linear appeals.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, we certainly have seen maybe not more appeals, but we're seeing a different variety of appeals. If you go back maybe 5-10 years, a lot of the appeals were more so in oil sands, and we still do get those. Fort Hills and Suncor. We were just in a hearing with Suncor last year, but we're getting a bit of a variety in terms of appeals, and it really depends on, I would say, more so if the company hires out external tax consulting, because for the most part, the companies that have internal representation, we work really well together. And we're not in the business of increasing the assessment or decreasing the assessment based on whatever external pressure we're getting of the day. As you can imagine, we get it from both sides. The municipalities want higher taxes and companies don't want to pay taxes. So we're right in the middle and we get a lot of pressure from both sides. Our duty is to make sure we're creating the right assessments, that we're following the guidelines and the legislation to create correct assessments. So if we talk with company reps and we have an open exchange of ideas, typically we don't go to a complaint because they understand why we created the assessment we did, what it's based on. We're using regulator data as well as their cost reporting. So, we're not making things up here. We have pretty concrete information that we go off of. And then we've seen a bit of a trend in terms of renewable energy and EPG. If Kristen, you wanted to mention that a little.
So we have seen an increase in complaints based on, I guess, the economics of the power industry and kind of the curtailments because the transmission system can't keep up with the amount of renewables that are coming on. So there is a complaint in that way, and we have to provide the stability in the assessment based on the actual value of the property, not the economics of the industry, is one of the big things about why we do industrial assessment the way that we do versus market value. Because if we were to do market value, then we're taking these economics, you're going to see a huge fluctuation. So we are seeing tax agent push that narrative in renewables because they're not able to produce to the capacity that maybe they could because they allowed a few too many renewables in that area. As well as we have one complaint for Rogers, and that is due to a new tax agent reviewing the information. So sometimes that can create a bit more of a fluctuation in the complaints.
Interesting. I could ask a lot more questions this department, but I think it's a good overview for us today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Round 2, Councillor Wesley.
Awesome. This is fun stuff, right, Mike's? And,
You bet.
And Kristen's? I just curious. A couple of things that kind of popped into my mind as you were doing your discussion about costing, and I'm just curious as the measures of cost verification. I know, having worked in corporate income tax way back in the day, we'd spend a lot of time on things like transfer pricing and so on, and just the way things are costed in different locales and jurisdictions. And I'm just wondering, how do you go about verifying that the costs that it took to put a facility online are a full representation of all the costs?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor, and that's something that we're constantly battling with. We have to ensure that, sure, we get reporting from the company, but you can't trust that at face value. You got to do a lot of deeper digging to figure out, is this the full reporting? Are they missing projects? So we use a lot of different tools. One tool we use is called StackDX. It used to be called PetroNinja. Another one is called EagleView Pictometry. They're both essentially aerial imagery. Some have built-in regulator data. Some are just more of a bird's eye view. But we use these to make sure we can have a spot check in terms of visuals of different projects. We can't always go and inspect each project depending on access, where properties are located. Sometimes you'll do an inspection of a property and you're not necessarily seeing the cost in front of you. You're just seeing a very significant facility and you're trying to figure out which portion you're dealing with. So some tools like that are very helpful. We also have a number of additional reporting mechanisms. So companies reporting to the regulator. Alberta Major Projects is another great source. And also what companies are reporting in their annual reports, if they're publicly traded, which a majority of these are. So you'll often come across conflicting information where a company will be very boastful in an annual report and then tell the assessor, oh, everything went wrong, nothing's going well for us. And so you put that report in front of them and say, can you square the circle for me here? You're telling us something completely different than you reported on just a couple months ago. And so it's really on the assessor to make sure we do our homework and find a variety of data sources because you can't just trust what a company reports to you. That's a great starting point. But then there's inspections, there's the third-party data sources we mentioned, and then collaborating with the company rep, both the tax agent, but also trying to get a member of the company in the room as well. We find that if you can get an engineer from the company within these meetings or within these inspections, they're very honest and like to brag about their properties. They'll tell you all the great things about the great work they're doing because they're not thinking about the assessment or the taxes. They just want to tell you how proud they are of the project. And you might see the tax agent giving them an elbow and saying, keep it down. You don't need to tell them how great things are. But it's really just a matter of looking at a variety of different data sources to make sure what's been reporting is accurate.
Okay. Last question before I think I get the hook is how often do we review those depreciation tables and how does data analytics inform that decision?
Well, the short answer is every 20 years, but the better answer is with the model review that's currently being looked at right now, and they've made a commitment to update every 5 years. So previously, it was done in the early 2000s. Some of those tables go back even further than that, to the 90s. And they're pretty standard tables. If you look at it, it's very rudimentary and very simple. So we're looking to see what the direction will be in terms of the new depreciation tables. It's been communicated by Minister that we are still going to maintain a floor and a ceiling, going back to your stability question. But in terms of the specific amounts, I think we'll see more customization per property type and more specific depreciation going forward.
Awesome. Thank you very much for all your answers.
Great. So thank you very much for coming out today. As you can tell, it's a topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts for the assessment. So thank you for being here and presenting. I do invite you to stay if you like, but you're also very welcome to leave because we still have some big presentations coming forward. So thank you for being here today. And with that, we're going to take a 6-minute comfort break. So 3:38, back in your chairs. Okay, we'll get started again. Thank you very much for your patience. If you learn anything today, you'll learn council's really invested in assessment and understanding where our taxes are coming from for the future. So we are very pleased to welcome our youth council here today. Christy, I will have you introduce your students who are here, and you have more in the audience, so maybe have each one of them give a wave so that we can acknowledge all of them, and we'll test your memory.
Thank you. So good afternoon. So my name's Christy Wall. I'm the Youth and Family Coordinator with FCSS, and I'm lucky enough to be the staff liaison to Youth Council. So today we have with us our brand new chair, Leandra. We have Soro, our vice chair. In the back, oh, we're missing a couple because they had to go off to work, but we have Ava, we have Samantha, and we lost Carla. And Maya stepped out. But that's who we have. I'm going to put it over to Leandra, and she's going to go through our PowerPoint.
Okay, and just before you do, thank them very much for coming out and apologize that, you know, we didn't get to them while they were here, but we greatly appreciate them coming out to a council meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome. It's Leandra.
Leandra.
Yeah. All right, so welcome.
Thank you. So I want to start off by thanking you guys for allowing us and inviting us to come here today. As Christy said, my name is Leandra, and I'm the newly elected chair of the Youth Council. And I'm going to share the proud moments that we had from Youth Council from 2025. And Christy just introduced our Youth Council members, so maybe I will skip that part. She did miss LeBron Makaya, so he's not here today, but he's also in our Youth Council, and also Vishwa Bera, who was also unable to make it. So without further ado, I'll probably get going. So like I said, thank you guys for having us today, and we'll be looking at highlights from 2025, things in the works that you can look forward to this upcoming year, and our future strat plan and how we are improving. So as I go on, I will be mentioning how we accomplished some of our goals from our last strat plan, our last term, which was 2023 to 2025. So some of the goals that we accomplished are in some of the events that we ran this year. So let's reflect. First off, we have our Unite and Lead conference, and we had this conference back in August, and it was just a chance and opportunity to invite all youth from all of Fort Saskatchewan and other youth organizations and groups from different cities to be able to come in and learn leadership skills, decision skills, and collaborate with each other. A goal that we accomplished from the last strat plan was to create meaningful and intentional change for youth by youth. So the whole conference was organized by Youth Council members, and the presenters that came were either youth focused or directly presented by youth. Like, for example, we had Discovering Our Unconscious Biases, which was my personal favorite, and we had that by the John Humphrey Center, and it was just really on discovering the biases that we have in our mind that we're not aware of, which is really cool. We had singer Phyllis Sinclair, who was storytelling and singing about her personal life and her real life experiences through guitar. And we had legislative services come in and present Robert's rules, which was really important for us to further professionalize and hone in on our conduct in an orderly and organized manner. And we also had debate skills by Edvig Debate and Speech Club, which was also run by youth around our age. Next, we had Bumset Beach, and those two points there are some of the goals that we accomplished, again, from our last term. So we really want to bring municipal enforcement, fire department, and RCMP closer to youth, as well as bring awareness to underutilized spaces like the RCMP Park. So we had this event twice in the year. We had it first in winter at the Dow Centennial Center in the gym there, and then the second time we had it at the RCMP Park in the sand beaches, which was really fun. We had, I think, Boys and Girls Club come out. We had hot dogs. It was really fun, like nice hot day too, so it was nice we got that weather. One of our initiatives for this goal, like I said, to bring RCMP and municipal closer together, build that strong relationship and connection. Next, we have naming campaign for the Heritage Park and statues, and we were really fortunate enough that we were asked by the city, and it was a privilege for us to be able to do these things and name the Heritage Park statues. And this one was actually organized and led by our former chair, Colby, and he took the lead on that one, which was nice. And this goal was to become an asset to our growing city alongside our community partners. So one of the things that Youth Council does is we plan lots of events for youth all around Fort Saskatchewan, and we usually generalize the events, but for this one, the scavenger hunt with the bridge, it was targeted specifically to our 16 to 24-year-olds, or more of our young adults who wanted that opportunity and experience to have some fun. So this one, we were developing organizations with other youth groups and organizations, so we partnered with the bridge to do this event, and we also, again, wanted to create meaningful and intentional change for youth by youth. Food Bank Challenge. So we were collaborating with a bunch of schools from Fort Saskatchewan. We kind of made it kind of fun, like had a challenge. Loser had to like wear the opposing school's colors, which is kind of cool. So you can see a pretty big jump from 2024 to 2025. Of the amount of food bank donations that all the schools were able to raise. And this goal was to build a vibrant, welcoming environment, rich with supports and diverse needs for all residents. And we did it around the March time because during the holiday seasons, or in winter and December and January, the food bank usually uses up most of their products and supplies. So we wanted to have it in March to, you know, bring back that supply for them and bring awareness to that. Recently in September or November, we visited the Shane Computer Recycling, and this one was very it gave us lots of perspective. We learned about how different kinds of electronics and products and batteries are recycled and where they are taken, and it gave us a lot of education and awareness, which was important because it connects to Youth Council's personal interest of being aware of and educating ourselves on the environment. And when youth are more informed, they are more likely to inform other people through that education, and then the pattern of continuous education and awareness grows throughout generations and throughout all the other youth that we know. Some of our annual events that we have garbage picking, which we will be doing coming up soon, and we have Cramathon that we have every year. We have it twice a year, one in the winter and then one in the spring, just the 2 times a year that the exams go on. And yeah, that's all. So what do we have upcoming next, you know, like this year and other events that we will be doing? So we have Show and Slide coming up on May 14th, and that is just a really fun event where youth can pick anything that they want and create a slideshow presentation on it and just talk about it for 5 minutes just to explore their interest on it. We have Screams on the Screen, September 25th. Our Regional Youth Conference, the second one, is coming up in November 10th, and then we have Community Youth Awards. I'll probably explain a little bit more about those 2 events. So Screams on the Screen is just a local movie night featuring a scary movie for the Halloween season. And our regional youth conference will be similar to the Unite and Lead one we had earlier in the year. Now we'll move on to this year's strat plan that we talked about. So that is the term 2025 to 2027. So first off, we have enhancing opportunities through collaborations. So some highlights is, as the youth conference is coming up, we're working with regional youth partners, and we are trying to support various groups in our community. One by showing up at various proclamations that we get invited to. So the land use bylaw, we were able to have some of our youth members show up to that and to attend and participate and get informed and get educated. We have improving governance and youth council expectations. So this one was one that we noticed that we had a struggle on. So we decided to take action and, put it in our strat plan so we were able to be more accountable for it. So youth council members are accountable for participating in youth council. So any new members that we have, changing some of our interview questions, for example, like instead of why do you want to join youth council, maybe what kind of qualities can we expect from you being on? Because then it just gives them a little bit more of accountability, and it lets us know that what we can expect and how we can incorporate them and their talents and their values and their personality and their skills into our youth council. improving access to resources. We have a budget now this year, which was really cool. And this budget helps us to know and plan events that we can afford for the year. And when we do this, we're being more responsible with our money because we didn't have a budget last year. So now we can prioritize events. And this budget helps us to provide those projects. And also just go back to the slide side really quick because I mentioned that we had Robert's Rules present at our Unite and Lead conference. So that's something that we plan to continue to have to improve our governance and to build a stronger youth council. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. And then engaging our community. So one of the things Youth Council does is, as you notice, we're kind of just an advocate for youth. So when we engage in our community, that's through our events like our annual water fight, our cramathon, and our young adult events. Some of our goals for this year is to increase our social media presence through the Fort Sask page and just to reach more youth that way, as well as increased reach to youth and to meet our goals of our 2025 to 2027 strategic plan that I just went over. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. And do you guys have any questions?
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm having a blonde moment. Who on council is on the Youth Council? Councillor Nguyen, great. So he's a representative. I was thinking it was maybe you, but yeah, it's okay. Great. So thank you. Okay, we have a long list of questions. I'm going to go first, though. And thank you for everything that you do. The question that I have, through your schools, do you have an opportunity to get up and speak to the students to let them know what the Youth Council is all about and what projects or how they could get involved?
Yeah, to the chair, Councillor Kasher. Yeah, we do. Actually, one of our recent members that just joined, she is on a leadership group at her school. And yeah, like anything that any events or project that we're working on, we encourage all of our youth members to present it to their schools if they are involved in leadership at their groups, at their schools, which they usually are. So that's how we, get more land and promote more of our projects.
Great. So just raise your hand. We saw
that's Samantha.
Thank you, Samantha. Okay, Councillor Wesley. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Awesome. Great presentation. Congratulations on your election as chair, by the way.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And special thanks for your donation to the food bank. Food bank's kind of a cause that's near and dear to my heart. So I think that's outstanding that you guys contributed to that. I appreciate that. I wonder if maybe you can just give us maybe a little bit of insight into why becoming chair was important to you, and what do you get from that role? What motivated you to be in this position that you're in, I guess?
Through the chair, Councillor Wesley. So why I wanted to be chair is honestly for myself, personal reasons. I wanted to try something new. I've been on youth council for a couple years now, so it was nice to, as a member, get perspective through our former chair Colby, and then now I wanted to see what that role was like. Take some more leadership, grow into myself, be more confident person, and also just be able to navigate more aspects of the projects that we do in Youth Council, and also do stuff like this, which is cool, nice experiences, new experiences to have.
Okay, no, and tremendous success on your part because you're very professional and very poised, and so kudos to you on that. And just one last thing before I get the hook, if you decide to ever come to MacEwan University, please let me know. I'd be happy to show you around.
Yeah, so if you haven't figured it out, he works at Grant MacEwan or MacEwan University.
I'm taken already at U of A.
Councillor Nguyen.
As the council appointed representative, just for reminder's sake, there is a very, very healthy dynamic between U of A and MacEwan students that exist on Youth Council. Sure. I've gained to appreciate that. Some cheers from the audience. So, it's been my privilege to join Youth Council in Fort Saskatchewan, and I have to say I didn't actually realize the scope of your interests and diversity that of people who sit on Youth Council. So, very polished presentation today. I think you're very well spoken. spoken, and appreciate just the the level, the layers of insight that we've received here at City Council for what Youth Council does. I think is very important, integral part of our community, and I do respect the vibrance and enthusiasm with which you conduct yourselves and bring to the table at our meetings. So it's become apparent to me that waste processing is one of the very keen interests of this group of people, and I've been able to help along with Councillor Katcher to facilitate tours of a facility coming up, and also learn about your engagement with our waste transfer facility and just taking care of the earth. So I applaud you for everything that you're doing and encourage you to keep doing it. I think Fort Saskatchewan should be proud of having such an active group of young people in the fort that are doing this work. So a question that I'll pose to you is, if in a year today you look back and you say we've fulfilled our mission, we've accomplished some objectives, what would be maybe some of the highlights of this upcoming 365 days from now? They can say, hey, we've got our stamp on this and we've done it. Obviously, you have some great events that are coming up that you facilitated along with Christy, but yeah, what would that look like to you?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. I think one of our highlights would be continuing advocacy for all the youth in Fort Saskatchewan, and just continuing to bring genuine joy to Fort Saskatchewan. I remember the first time we had our water fight, I was there, and it was just like such a magical moment. Like the firefighters had their hose out and it was just all over, and then all the kids running around, and it just looked super fun. So continuing to bring that joy and that genuineness to Fort Saskatchewan for our youth, for families.
Excellent. Yeah, great goals, and keep it up. And I look forward to seeing you every month, and keep thinking of questions that you want to ask me. I get to do a council report every meeting, so I think I pique the interest of some of the members every time I open my mouth and start talking about everything that council is up to. So look forward to staying involved.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for being on the committee. He's got 2 little ones coming up, so he can bring a lot of perspective from all ages. Mayor Macon.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies, for your presentation. Sorrel, maybe I could just go to you. Leandra was asked why she wanted to be the chair. What brought you to council?
Okay. Through the chair to Mayor Mencken, I came to youth council like 4 years ago, I want to say. And through that time, I have been able to hear presentations from so many different groups that I wouldn't have thought to think about. And the knowledge that I have gained through this experience has been exponential and has allowed me to be a better person and community member through so many aspects of my life.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you for being on youth council. I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff, so let's see if I can make some questions out of this. The water fight brought me as much joy as it did you. I really enjoyed myself, so I do hope that you do that again. I would invite you guys to take any opportunity you can to come and present to council on a youth perspective on anything that we are discussing. There's delegations at the beginning of a meeting, so if there's any big decisions that we're making, big or small, coming up that you guys have a youth perspective on, register for delegations or just show up to the meeting and you get 5 minutes, and it's your opportunity to have that perspective documented in our decision. So I would definitely highly recommend that you do that. I know listening to your presentation, I'm going to do a better job of ensuring that youth council is invited to any proclamations and things that we are doing, because we would love to have you there and represented more. And I probably should have thought about that before. So we'll definitely ensure that that is happening. The Unite and Lead conference looks amazing. I'm glad you guys had all those great presenters and that you got so much out of it. If I'm understanding you correctly, are you doing this regional youth conference this year instead of that, or is that being put on by somebody else?
Through the chair to Mayor Mencken. It's not really replacing it. It's kind of a yearly thing where we meet with like the regional other youth councils to see their perspective as well, and meet as a group, see what they're working on, see what we're working on, and get perspective from other communities and how they're doing and grow together, which is wonderful.
Awesome. So will you do the Unite and Lead conference in 2026?
Sorry, through your chair to Mayor Macon. So what has happened, actually, Soro is sitting on it, but and as well as Ava, is we are doing another conference, but we're doing it regionally. So it means that our youth council, as well as Spruce Grove, Beaumont, and St. Albert are all meeting and planning it together. Spruce Grove's hosting, but we're all putting in funds from the different youth councils to make it happen.
Awesome. I love that collaboration. That's amazing. We do the same thing at a municipal level. So I love it. I think that's all I have. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Councillor Andawa, you're next. Oh.
See, it's easy to forget.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for coming out today, getting involved in your community, and just showing an interest at such a young age. It's always so great to see. I just had a question for my own understanding. Could you talk about how many members actually comprise the total youth council, and like what ages they are, what schools do they go to in town?
Thank you, Councillor. So, so we do have a terms of reference, and we have a minimum of 5 to a maximum of 14. Currently, we have 9. We have representation from not every single school out in Fort Saskatchewan. It's 14 to 24, but I have representation right now from McEwen, U of A, Concordia, St. Andre Bassett, and Fort High.
Okay. And for the schools that we don't have representation from, do we go, or do we talk to our school boards about that, or trying to drum up interest? I'm just trying to understand, do we have tons of kids apply to join the youth council, and how can we continue to build that roster up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently what we're doing is I'm presenting in the schools. Sometimes because they are students, it's difficult to have them always attend with me because their schools at the same
skip, right? Yeah.
But when we can get into the schools, we do. When we did the food bank challenge, to be honest, it was a great opportunity. Some of the schools invited youth council in to speak. That's a great opportunity for them to kind of promote youth council. It's really about interest. So if youth are interested, they're encouraged to apply. It's an application process, and then they have to go through an interview. And so it's a little bit more, there's a couple more pieces that have to be done, I think, for this in comparison to another group that I run called Youth Action Committee, where anyone can volunteer. So there is a little bit of an ask on this one. And we do go out and try and promote as much as we can. We've grown, and it's also an ask. So part of our terms of reference also says that it's a minimum, it's a 2-year term. So we do ask that if they're going to join us, that they commit.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for all that you do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. A lot of great information. I commend you for stepping forward and coming on the council. I made a little note here. So you're a youth council. Maybe you should not be the chair. You should be the junior mayor. So what is the age range, and that's minimum and maximum allowed, and what happens, I'll tie them together so that you can keep answering whoever answers it. What happens if someone is now at the end of their term, they're aging out? Would they be allowed to continue if that happened? I don't know.
I can answer a little bit, and then maybe I'll turn it over to Chrissy for the second part. I think, like she said before, we have 16 to 24. Yeah, right now we have 16 to 24. And then, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I think I'm maybe missing.
Well, just for one, the age range. So what's the minimum allowed? I think it's 5. Younger than.
Or the minimum age range?
Minimum age, 14 to 25?
24, yeah.
Okay, 24. So what happens if, someone joins, they're 25, just heard about it, can they do the 2-year term?
Our terms of reference say that they need to be 24.
Oh, okay.
We have somebody that's aging out, Carla.
And after that, they have to run for real council. Okay, I think that's all I have. Keep it up. And I think how long has this been around now? Youth Council. 10 years? I feel like it was in my first term of council that
Yeah.
kind of started.
Ooh, you
And
got
I
me.
know for a long time there was a bit of a struggle with getting even that minimum 5. So it's awesome to see that 9 members is really doing well, and it would be nice to see it build some more. That's okay.
You
It's
got
okay.
me.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you very much. Can you just go back to your very first slide, if you
Absolutely.
don't mind? No, it doesn't, but
This one?
keep going, keep going. There you go. Okay, I'm going to be really bad. I'm going to recess for us for 1 minute. Don't leave. Stay where you are. Invite your people to come behind you so I can grab a picture for Christy. So it proves that you were here. They are so proud. They're just beaming back there. So if you just kind of stand. There you go. Okay, and I'll send this to Christy. Perfect. So thank you very much for being out here today. You are welcome to stay and learn more, or you are welcome to leave. You've been very patient today.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. I think it gives us hope with the youth in our schools and in our community that, you know, we need to keep it positive and keep them uplifted. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're out of recess. Back. Okay. All right, so the next item that we have is Policing Committee, Corinne Rayner, and
Thank you.
all right, so I'll let you introduce. I know you have your people on this side.
Yes. Good afternoon to the chair and members of council and Mayor Macon. My name is Corinne Rayner. I am the Director of Protective Services for the city, and with me is the Policing Committee Chair, Terry Noble. We do have an entourage of some of our Policing Committee members as well in the gallery, and Terry will speak to them in a moment here. Today's presentation provides an overview of the Policing Committee's work over this past year. At its core, effective policing starts with listening, and today's presentation reflects how community voice is directly shaping our local policing priorities. Over the past year, the committee has contributed meaningfully through engagement, review, and analysis, particularly in relation to the Policing Priority Survey. Through this work and in consultation with the RCMP Detachment Commander, the committee is pleased to endorse the RCMP's new Community Prioritization Plan. While the terminology has shifted from the Annual Policing Priorities Plan to the Community Prioritization Plan, the process is to establish priorities and the objectives remain consistent. The committee has played an active role in informing these priorities, ensuring that they reflect both community concerns and local policing context. I'll now turn it over to Terry for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to the Mayor, and to...
Sorry, turned off your mic.
There you go.
Sorry, my apologies. I thought I was turned on here. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a good news story for us. It's a very honorable position to be in, to be able to speak with you today. Foremost, it's a real team effort, the Policing Committee, and it has many, many partners and stakeholders. And I'm pleased to introduce those 7 voting members behind us, plus those members of our community who are engaged in direct relationship, the RCMP and
Terry, they're just asking if you can speak a little closer to the mic. I don't think they can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, I'm getting head nods.
Okay. So if you can get the committee to stand up behind us. Mike, Scott, Ben, and Christy. This is our committee, and as well as Karina and myself, and I'm such an honorable group of people who are so dedicated to their task, and it's just all about relationships and building with people, and these are pretty key people in this community, and they bring a very diverse community background, of course, and they spend an inordinate amount of volunteer time because they are all volunteers, and we really do appreciate the effort that they commit to it. I'd also like to acknowledge two other people that are in the room. We have our mayor and our Alderman Wesley, both who are recent graduates of the Policing Committee and who led us down a long path.
Still a current student there, Terry.
So really, as you all are aware, this is a liaison group. We don't have a lot of power, but we do have a lot of opportunity to interface with you as a council and with our partners as we've just introduced. And it's an important link. It's one of the few committees I can think of, or a few organizations that plays this middle ground territory, trying to understand what you want, what the RCMP wants, what municipal wants, and balancing that act. And then yet listening to the community and understanding what they want as well. So it's a neat responsibility, and we work hard at doing that. The focus, of course, is the understanding the community expectations all around us, that whole large area of safety, and particularly in policing, and ensuring those perspectives are formally communicated and considered by all the parties. We are now under the official mandate of the government as of the new Police Act, and as a result, we as a senior policing committee in the province, we've been around for over almost 25 years or better that I can find the records of. So we go back to just around the 2001, 2002 era. So we've been around a long time, and we are kind of a model for all the other engaging communities. 48 new policing committees coming on board, and they are all in a state of flux right now, trying to understand how a policing committee can work. And we hope to answer a lot of their questions, and we've had lots of requests for information, and we're working with them to make that happen. As a matter of logistics, we meet monthly. We receive the regular updates from the detachment and the commander and from municipal enforcement. Of course, Karine gives us update overall perspective from the protective services. And we also hear from, of course, our representative council member, who enlightens us to what's happening from your perspective back to us. So we appreciate those efforts. We talk about staffing, we talk about crime, we talk about traffic statistics, and lots of particularly emerging community concerns and events within our city. We also review the quarterly priority reports from the RCMP, and particularly this year, which was really important for us, was the annual online survey. In the year 2025, we did a hands-on open house event at the Dow, and we had a whole grand total of 32 people attend. The survey that we conducted this year resulted in 425 responses. That's quite a significant difference and a lot better perspective analytically. I know that I think you've received the varying comments that received from the community members, and pretty wide ranging, but a very definite value to us to have that, as it helps us and helps the RCMP establish their priorities. So again, in 2025, under Alan's leadership, we did a whole bunch of good work in community engagement and visibility. And the community saw, one of the key things we've seen in this past year is a significant number of public coming to our meetings. I was on this committee for a number of years back from 2005 on, and we won't go back that far back. I think that's way, way back. But there were years we never saw a member of the public ever attend our meeting. This year we had 29 show up. So the word is out, I think, and the availability of the committee is there. And that kind of word spreads pretty quickly in the community. So we expect to see that similar kind of numbers in the months to come. We've had that so far this year. Members of the community have supported, of our committee, have supported all kinds of events, as alluded to earlier today. I can remember Alan flipping hot dogs and having good discussions with the youth group, for example. We supported the RCMP municipal enforcement in all of their events that then we get invited to, and we volunteer to help them out. We've had the municipal enforcement bike rodeo. That's a fairly big event, and we had a really, really good turnout and support there. So we will continue to do that because that outreach is important and the visibility is important. We've also had some members attend ride-alongs with both municipal enforcement and the RCMP, and we've had discussions over pizza with the RCMP and their members and try to build those relationships, because that's a key role for us to have the members know about us as well as the public know about us. Karine.
One of the Policing Committee's goals was to increase the committee's profile in the community, and this has been achieved. This slide highlights the strong support from the Corporate Communications Department and our own Kristen Kenny that is with us today as well. We would like to thank them for their input and work on creating informative videos and all of our materials that help promote the committee. Enhanced promotion helped raise awareness of the committee, and as Terry has mentioned, we did have great responses and attendance at our meetings. This has been instrumental in increasing participation and awareness of the committee's role.
As I've mentioned, we had this large attendance of public to come. Our balancing act is to differentiate between being a complaint department and a resource department. It's easy to come to the council or to our committee meetings and complain. It's nice to listen, but it helps us we've streamlined a little bit by having them register to come to our meetings. It gives us a heads up as to what their concerns may be and whether we can head it off or help them, direct them, send them the right path. That has worked well. We still have it open to people to come and just talk, and we try to limit that conversation. You can appreciate we have a 2-hour meeting once a month in which we're trying to do a number of things. We're hearing council reports, we're hearing other committee reports, we're hearing from other organizations. We're trying to provide some training periods of time, and we're trying to utilize our time well. So we try and limit it somewhat to that event. But there is some real value in extending that time frame, and that engages, particularly if you look back to the problem area of Ross Creek last year, and we spent considerable time with that group. That resulted in us getting a new member on our committee. Alyssa Wilson is now a member of the Policing Committee, in part because of the success that the Policing Committee had with arranging and helping solve that problem down there. coming up is the all kinds of themes that were presented this year included properties, as we know about. Traffic safety is an ongoing one as long as I've been on this committee. That's been one that's generated forever. Traffic safety, trail and path use is becoming an interesting issue as well. I did learn the other day that there is pending legislation to better describe what those kind of vehicles can be used on pathways, because right now that's a free path, literally. All kinds of varying motorized vehicles are on those pathways. Well, the ministry in the province is defining what that will be. So it would be interesting to see how that outcome comes in the near future. Of course, there's the unhoused issues that are going on, and that's not unique to this community. It's a wide-ranging concern, and it's not one that's very simple to resolve. And it will take all of us working together to find avenues and solutions to that problem, from the provincial government right down to what we do in this community. So all of these concerns, you can appreciate, are then heard by the stakeholders. The RCMP hear them, municipal enforcement hears them, and we will work diligently to try and do what we can from our end to do that. All complaints that we do get, or concerns, are addressed as best we can, and they are followed back up with a letter or notification of where it's gone and what steps have been taken. Is that always accepted? Maybe not well, but at least they get an explanation of what's happening. For the year 2026, it's going to be fairly consistent with what we've done in the past, and it's ongoing. These will include increasing public awareness of our committee, supporting the varying community safety programs, and strengthening the positive relationships between the community, police, and I'd like to add the municipal enforcement as well. These priorities align closely with the Council's direction and broader safety commitments to the safety. And these are in part of the new provincial mandate that's required that policing committees be involved with setting the priorities within the community and particularly the safety aspect of it. Just a few other related kind of things. We are part of the Alberta Association of Police Governance. I happen to represent the committee at this time right now on that board. We've been a member on that board for many, many, many years, and we'll continue to do that. That plays a very valuable opportunity to learn an awful lot about what other communities are doing and vice versa. We've recently attended Sherwood Park, for example, and welcoming them on their second meeting of their new committee. Alan and Alyssa and I attended that meeting, and it was interesting to see how they're starting out. So, based on some community input and council or committee discussions, the committee supports the three proposed priorities for the 26-27 year. These are intelligence-led police related to drug and property crime, crimes of persons against persons, the police visibility, and community relations. These priorities were developed in consultation with the RCMP detachment commander based on the community feedback, the crime statistics that were gathered, the resource capacity within the detachment, and how we can utilize our municipal enforcement as well. The details of the policing priorities will be brought forward to council separately as a part of the formal community prioritization plan process on June 9th of this year. Just before we turn this over to so you can ask us some questions, I have some really quite positive things I'd like to share with you, acknowledgements. First of all, as you know, the month of April, Protective Services as a group won the city's Elevate and Celebrate Award. I think that speaks really well to the commitment of so many people that are in this room at the moment. And I applaud that effort sincerely. I also received an email recently, and maybe you did as well, about the ME officer who, instead of handing out a ticket, rolled down a window and spoke to what he didn't know was a City of Fort Saskatchewan employee, and he was chatting with a dog, sticking his head out the back window of the traffic light. It was very impressive to the employee that he would take that time to do that as versus a municipal law-abiding kind of rule. So it gained a whole bunch of points and credibility, and I applaud that member for doing that. Kindness and caring and sharing can change an attitude really, really quickly on a lot of fronts, and I applaud that member's response. I also read recently that Fort Saskatchewan is one of 9 safest communities in Alberta, particularly for safe retirement purposes and for seniors living. We are compared to Canmore, Lacombe, Okotoks, Coaldale, for example, Chestermere, High River, and a few other communities. The basis of that assessment was low crime rates, walkable downtowns, walking paths, the availability near water, or a water source like a lake or a river, outdoor access, trail networks, and close access to hospitals. So I thought it was pretty kind of a neat to be ranked in that level. I hadn't seen that before. It came up on a Google website, and it gives a highlight of each of those communities. So if you want to go on Google and ask for the safest communities, it'll give you the detail on that. And then finally, I guess I would like to thank you as a council for the support that you provide to us, and it means a lot. And yes, it's a legal requirement and all those good things, but there's real strength on this council at all levels, and I appreciate the support you've given to the detachment. And for any of you who have never been to one of our meetings, you're more than welcome if you can handle Al. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Great. Yes, there's a full lineup of people here for questions. So thank you very much for your presentation. And yes, for anybody that doesn't know, when I joined council in 2007, Terry was already on the policing committee back then. So he goes on he predates me a long ways away. So thank you for your continued enthusiasm with policing and keeping our city safe. Thank you. All right, we'll get on to questions. Councillor Wesley, who is your council representative? Yes, push the button.
There we go. Thank you very much. I have been associated with the police committee for almost 3 years now, and I can think in my very unbiased opinion, they are universally a great group of people. I encourage anybody who has a concern with policing in Fort Saskatchewan to come to the policing committee meetings and voice those concerns. It is a unique opportunity where you have the RCMP detachment commander, the head of municipal enforcement, the head of protective services, all there in the same room, and you can really make sure that your voice is heard. Now, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's an intimidating group, and yes, sometimes Scott and Ben are intimidating looking guys, but the team, the policing committee people are just an awesome association of folks, and the dynamic in that committee is just an amazing one of high collegiality, as well as really great dedication to the residents of Fort Saskatchewan. So with that, Terry, I guess my question to you would be is How do you continue to recruit such amazing people?
That is a really good question. I think in light of your vast experience on the board, that's probably part of the reason. No, we have a great team of people who have a real strong sense of caring. They want to do the best for the city. They want to do the best for their neighbors. They want to do the best that we can in this area. And they're working hard to make that happen. And they do it for free. We buy them a donut and coffee now and again, but they do it with all sincerity, with great discipline and support. And our attendance is 100%, 99% of the time. Today, we have everybody here today. I think that speaks volumes in its own right. And I thank them for staying for the day. It's now 4:30, and some have been here since 3:30, since 1:30. So thank you for that effort. I think that's my reasoning. Maybe Karine can add to that.
It's a loaded question.
It is a loaded
but you're used
question.
to them.
Yes, we have a great process of recruitment, and a lot of times it's outreach within the community that when you know people that would be interested and that application process comes through, it's just good to nudge people in the direction of, hey, apply for the policing committee. So we are very fortunate.
And just one last thing, I forgot to mention it. Kristen Kenny, who is sort of like the glue that holds the policing committee together, that sort of makes it all happen and operationalizes everybody's great ideas. And she is a legitimate City of Fort Saskatchewan superstar.
Great, thank you. And just to tag on to that, when we did the interviews this year, there were several excellent candidates. It was very difficult to narrow it down to just one. So we thank everybody for putting their names forward. And when positions open, hopefully they'll apply and you'll get some other new blood. I don't know how often some of these people are moving. So
we are in a very enviable position, having talked through my fellow colleagues on the Alberta Association of Police Governance and the new communities. They are having, in some communities, a really difficult time engaging members of the public to join their committee. In one case, I know they were able to select three members. Then they found out that they had to go through an enhanced security clearance. All three resigned. So, you can appreciate that that's a community of over 10,000 people, and it was really challenging for them, and they're still struggling.
great. Mayor Macon?
Just for your presentation. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. The presentation made me giggle because I just don't forget the awkward conversations that we had to have while they took pictures of us and trying to pretend to have conversations. So I think they turned out okay, in spite of our fake conversations. Certainly the policing committee is kind of careful what you wish for, because we really wanted people to know that it existed, and they do know now, and that's why you have such a great attendance at the meetings now. So the three priorities I agree with. I appreciate the community collaboration that went into coming up with those, and I'll just point out that, with you saying that, you went to Sherwood Park to see that one, I do really appreciate that our policing committee continues to be leaders. We do have one of the oldest, if not the oldest, policing committee in the province. And so when the regulations changed that mandated municipalities to have it, we were leaders in that, and lots of communities look to us for that support. So I appreciate that you're still going out there and helping them out. And I think that speaks very highly of our policing committee board. So thank you. And thank you to all the people who volunteer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blissard.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Thanks for all of you for attending today too and doing all that you do monthly. I'd love to come, but I'm busy Thursday night, so I can't ever make it. But I have a few little questions. Number one, Josie, it says, is TSWG, and I was just curious what that stands for.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, that's the Traffic Safety Working Group representative.
Okay.
So, yes.
It just, no acronym I could figure out. So, and no offense here on asking these questions, but is there a term for each person that comes on the committee? And is there a maximum number of terms, or is it fairly open? Or is there a repeat like Terry because we didn't get enough some years?
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, so there is a 3-year term, and each member on the policing committee can serve up to 2 consecutive terms. If they go off for a year, they are eligible to reapply.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple more little ones. Actually, yeah, a couple more little ones. So when you have the public come, is it usually because they've got an issue, a beef, or is it just they want to come and see it? You know,
The answer is yes. We can't have everything. We've had people just come to listen, just to see what it's about. We have people coming with very firm grievances against the RCMP's approach to something, or a municipal enforcement officer's comment. We've had, as you know, property concerns. We've had residents complain about the roadway down to the boat launch area. We've had those kind of mundane kind of things, but they are very solid in those kind of concerns. And we as a group are learning to better address their issues. And frankly, to be honest, to put it where it really is, I know in several cases we've gone to a large extent, the several consultations with either RCMP or municipal enforcement officers, talking more than once or twice with these people to let them know what the bylaw is, or what the concern is, and how we can best address it. Some of them want to change the bylaw, like tomorrow morning would be nice, but other than that, no. We know they've done a very thorough professional job in trying to address the issue.
I'm sure it's a learning curve as they come forward, and especially the negative people that turn it into something maybe positive by, addressing what their concerns are.
Absolutely. They don't all walk away happy, but they have been given an audience with which to, again, express their concern. And some have come back. Some have left the room visibly upset. But we all make choices, and we will try and do the best we can every time.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
I just got one more little one, then I'll finish.
If I give you one, I got to give everybody one.
All I'm going to ask is, so I see that you have 30 minutes for the public, but the rest of it is not a public meeting.
It depends on the issue, but we try and keep it to that. If there's nobody present, then we have more time to do other things, right?
True enough.
Okay, Councillor Rendawa.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, Terry, Corrine, and the rest of the members out there, and especially Councillor Wesley for all that you do for our community. I think the policing committee is just a great example of local democracy working so well, where residents, when they have complaints, can go to these committees that are filled with members of the public and experts that are on the ground. So I think you guys do a great job. And it's great to see the graphics everywhere. Every time I see Councillor Wesley's face on the side of a bus, I feel safe. And I hope the residents of Fort Saskatchewan do as well. A question kind of on that is, you have a budget of like $9,700. Is that enough to provide your members with like the training you need to go to the conferences, to put those advertisements I believe I've seen inside the transit bus?
Through the chair to Councillor Rendawa, yes, it is. We just recently increased that budget in the last budget process, and so that will provide some more members to be able to attend the AAPG conference that's coming up here in Taber, and we've also got a membership through the Canadian Association of Police Governance. So currently, right now, it is enough budget for what the committee plans to do in the upcoming year.
Okay, that's great. I think when we have residents that are, using their own time, I would say, to volunteer with the community and so forth. It's nice to be able to go to those things and have that personal development. My last question was just regarding the survey. So there was about 425 people that completed the survey. I noticed about 10% of them weren't from Fort Saskatchewan themselves. So how do we do that from like a data perspective? Do we exclude those? Do we include it and like kind of understand that these results may be skewed a little bit because of residents from other municipalities?
Through the chair to Councillor Rendawa, the reason why you see that is because our RCMP jurisdiction includes Bruderheim, Chipman, Lamont County, and Lamont, and Sturgeon, a portion of Sturgeon County. So in order for the detachment commander to get a sense of what his entire jurisdiction is looking at, then we open it up to all of that. So we can see the data as to how many Fort Saskatchewan residents responded, and we can kind of drill into that. But overall, it gives a good sense of what our residents and concerns are really all about and how they rank those priorities.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation here today. Thank you for all the good work that you do. I know the policing committee is making a difference. I enjoyed doing the interviews this year, hearing about what people think and why they want to get involved. And I think it's very impressive. So keep up the good work. And as I've said to everybody else, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. It's been a long afternoon. So we will take recess. How long would you like? 5, 10 minutes? 10? Okay, 4:50, back in your chairs. Thank you. Okay, it's 4:50. I asked everybody to be back in their chairs, so we are going to get started. So we have Janelle and Kyle are going to give us an update on the Parkland bylaw review. A very old bylaw. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Waite. I am the Park Services Coordinator for the City of Fort Saskatchewan, and I am joined by Janelle Hart, Park Services Manager. Also joining us in the room is Richard Gagnon, Public Works Director, Sergeant Ben Sharp, Municipal Enforcement Supervisor, and John Buchko, who is representing Authenticity and is the consultant hired to write the Parkland bylaw. He is joining us online.
I don't see him online. Is he online? Oh, okay. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
And I'm here to present to council a modernized and updated Parkland bylaw. The Town of Fort Saskatchewan Open Space Bylaw number 1952 was established in 1984 and amended in 1991 and 1994. It has been 30 years since the last revision. During the 2025 budget deliberations, council approved an update to the bylaw, and in November of 2025, the team from Authenticity was retained for consultation on the update. Revisions to the Parkland bylaw modernize definitions and bylaw structure, identifies trail and park space allowances, and updates the penalty fee schedule. Other changes also formally implement the strategic recommendations established in the 2024 Urban Forest Protection and Enhancement Plan. The updated bylaw maintains current service levels while clarifying rules and regulations for the use of parkland spaces in the community. Some notable changes that can be found in the updated bylaw include the bylaw proposes that our parks remain open between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. However, in addition to the bylaw, we propose making the trail network accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the purpose of safe, active transportation throughout the community. Some of the rationale that went behind this decision was we wanted to keep our trail network, which is a fantastic way of traveling and recreating within the community, as an opportunity for users to continue to use it, maybe at a time when their typical work-life schedule may not be able to accommodate the park hours in place. Through the update, the protection of trees on public land was included. We added additional protection and ways of cost recovery due to damage. Cost recovery will include lost value and cost of replacement of trees. Encroachment provisions were added to address common modern issues such as private landscaping, structures, and storage on parkland, giving the city clear tools for enforcement and restoration. Items relating to trail etiquette on pathways that was included in the previous bylaw were removed as they are not enforceable. Instead, these items will be used as part of an educational materials that the city will communicate to the public through an educational campaign. The updated Parkland bylaw does not include a pathway speed limit. A limit would require the ability to enforce, and most trail users do not have a means to monitor their speed on trails. The fee and penalty schedule was modernized to reflect current enforcement practices, proportional penalties, ensuring consistency and deterrence. The fees are consistent with other City of Fort Saskatchewan bylaws and with comparable fees used in other municipalities. The project team researched comparative bylaws and fee schedules when developing the Parkland bylaw draft to be in alignment with our current city bylaws and other municipalities as shown in the table. The next step is to inform the public through the city's online engagement platform, which will include an opportunity for information sharing. This will go live on April 22nd and close for comments on May 15th. Comments will be reviewed to support our public education campaign on the new bylaw. The final bylaw will be submitted for 3 readings at the regular council meeting on July 7th, 2026. Thank you, and at this time, we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sure that was very quick. I'm sure everybody has read this through and through, and there will be lots of questions. All right, Mayor Macon, you're first.
Thank you very much. A few questions. 5.22.2, which is use of portable gas fire pits. So if I'm understanding how this is reading correctly, is anyone can use a portable gas fire pit in any park? Is that correct?
Through the chair to Mayor Macon, yes, that's correct.
So, like you go to Legacy Park for a festival, you got your chairs, you can bring a gas fire pit there? Is that, would that be allowable?
Yes, the way it's worded, that would be allowable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to think back as we provide some feedback on this because I'm not totally sure that's maybe what we anticipated, but in the writing, we wouldn't have a way to enforce not doing that, something like that. So I'm going to think a little bit more about that one. 7.2, that's dealing with encroachment. Do we currently have problems with this and problems enforcing encroachment issues?
Throughout the community, there are definitely cases of encroachment. I wouldn't say there's anything that's of drastic nature that needs addressing. And this bylaw by no means is meant to be something that's implemented and then used as a tool to go after encroachment that's currently in place, but rather to provide information to residents on the process on how we would like them to approach possibly an alteration to public land and going through the alteration to public land permit to make something happen like that. As well as just provide more tools in the toolbox for our ME department when it does come to somebody encroaching on public land when they should not be.
Okay, and then I just have one final one. The removal of trail etiquette, I appreciate why that's being done. It's not enforceable. Can you give me some ideas of what trail etiquette was previously in the last iteration? Like what is it that we were trying to enforce previously that we're not going to anymore because we simply can't do it?
Yeah, if you just give me one moment here. So as an example, in the amendment to the bylaw, number C27-94, any person using a pathway shall travel each pathway using extreme caution and attention to avoid colliding with other users, to be considerable of other users on the pathway, to give advance warning of the intention to pass another user by calling out, using a bell or horn or other warning device. There's examples like that.
Okay, no, that's fair. I appreciate that. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Awesome, thank you. 2 questions there, Kyle. We all got an email about someone who's expressing concerns about bikes in the trail areas and apparently building ramps in the river valley and so on. Would this bylaw get to something like that, or does it already deal with something along those?
Well, currently the Parkland bylaw does protect our park spaces, and we work closely with like the Fort Saskatchewan Trail Lines who maintain the trails that are through the River Valley, and they stick to the adhered and agreed upon routes and maps between the city and the group, and anything beyond that would be considered an encroachment.
Okay. Just maybe a follow-up on that. For a person who's concerned about that, what would be their next step to inquire as to whether there's been such an encroachment or whether these changes were allowed or not allowed?
We can connect with that resident and gain a better understanding of the scenario and the location. It would also be a matter of looking at the standards at which the ramps and jumps are built, and we follow the provincial government and what they have set up for guidelines, and we also follow the guidelines from the municipality of Windsor. Whistler, sorry, they have quite an extensive bike system, so we followed those guidelines.
Okay, and just maybe just a general question about connections to severity of offense to the fines. I'll admit a bias in here as a son who's a flagger, and I look at 8.1.4 and disobey a flagger, city employee, or peace officer is $250 for a first offense, and that seems awfully light. But just maybe a general commentary on how we connect fines to severity of the offense.
Yeah, so as we were going through this whole process, with the help of Authenticity, we were able to compare ourselves to other municipalities and bylaws of similar nature. And we took that table and we figured out an average of what the cost was or the fines that they apply. And we tried to sort ourselves and put ourselves in a comparable nature to the rest of the municipalities that we're compared to. As well as we wanted to keep our fines and our fees in that schedule kind of comparable to other current City of Fort Saskatchewan bylaws.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. I'm putting myself next in the order. So I have several, so I'll be back a few times. The one that I had my top priority question was about the protection of the trees. And I know I've asked this question before because people who back onto trails and there's spruce trees that overhang into private yards, I know in some instances the property owners were allowed to trim them before, and I asked the question last year and it was said, oh yeah, tell them to go ahead. So that would be in breach of this now, wouldn't it?
To the chair, it's kind of a little bit of a double-edged sword. So if a tree is overgrowing your property line, you are allowed to trim that tree, so long as you don't impact the structural integrity or the health of the tree. So if you were to cut off a few branches or just go straight up from your property line, that is permitted trimming of the tree. If they were to go into the park and cut down that tree because branches were overhanging, that's where this bylaw would come into play.
Okay, just want to double check. I'm going to cut some trees. Okay. The other one that I have, and I do have to ask this because an email was sent in about the water being not allowed to go onto public lands, which I fully understand because I have people who encroach their water onto my property. But the reason for that is to avoid erosion, and nobody is grandfathered under this. It would be just, and how is it going to be enforced? Go for it.
Chair. The intention of the bylaw is not to go after things that are currently in place, and then there may be examples of drainage that are currently going out into a park space, but not causing any damage or of concern to parks or any other users of the space. But what we want to do is be able to have the tools in place so that should an event occur where it now does damage the parkland or the open space, we want to be able to have the tools in place to be able to then go to that private property and say, hey, what you did was wrong. Here's what we're going to do moving forward to rectify that.
Makes sense. Okay, that's two. I'll be back to you, Councillor Blizzard.
I was counting.
You got three.
The first question is, well, thank you for the presentation, although it was a lot shorter than I expected too. I noticed it says the park is closed 11 to 6, which I've always seen the sign, so I, stay out of the park. But in the summer, It's light out till midnight sometimes, and the shortest route home is through the pathways. So I did see, and I didn't write down where that was, I thought about that after, that you could go on the pathway between 11 and 6. So as long as you stick to the pathway and don't go on the playground and use the swings, I'm okay to go on the pathways through the park systems.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, that was the intention behind that. Was there's many examples of maybe it's inappropriate that I would be on the roadway and I need to travel from my friend's house to get home now. This is an opportunity that somebody could use our fantastic trail network to get from A to B.
Okay. In the winter, it doesn't work so well because it's pretty dark there, but yeah, okay. And my second, I don't know if it's a question, but I'm going to point this out. So if you go to 8.2, when I read something like this, I expect the second item to complete a sentence. So it says, while in a park, no person shall. And the first one says operate a miniature vehicle, prohibited miniature vehicle. It makes sense. But when you read the second one, I think it needs some rewording, because while in a park, no person shall, a person may ride. It doesn't complete the sentence. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if we just want to look at it for when you come up again and reword it, because to me it's not very clear then just the way it's worded. No person shall, a person may ride. So somehow change it so it becomes the complete sentence.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, I think that's a great catch. We'll definitely make note of that and rectify that before coming back.
Okay, and I do have more, so I guess I'll go on round two.
Okay, I'll put you down behind me. Go ahead, Councillor Randawa.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. Just a question regarding the fines. How many fines do we give out in a typical year under this bylaw? Do we know?
I would maybe defer that to Sergeant Sharp.
Through to Councillor Randawa, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I could get that number for you and provide it to Kyle and Joe.
Okay, yeah, I'd just be interested to know, like, are we talking about a handful? Are we talking about a lot of them? Kind of helps then put the fines into perspective, I would say. Second question, kind of piggybacking off one of Councillor Catcher's. I think we all received an email from a resident regarding 5.7. Just the water coming off like a house and going into the parkland or so forth, that no person shall drain or redirect water from a private parcel of land onto or into a park. Apparently we have some houses in the Pineview area that like this kind of happens currently. I'm assuming if this gets passed, we wouldn't go and like retroactively go after these older homes. I don't know if you have any context on that.
Through the chair to Councillor Randawa, I think you're correct in that statement. Like I said, we don't want to implement this bylaw to then be able to go after every little example of drainage into a park space. However, if there were a property owner in that Pineview area that decided to drain their hot tub into the park space and the chemical kills off the grass, then that would be an example of being able to have the tools to then be able to go to that property owner and rectify that situation.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for all the work you guys put into this. Looking forward to the public feedback we'll get through the process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'm not going to ask too many questions about this right now because I think we're going to get a lot of feedback and then see what comes from there. But one thing I kind of had a vision when seeing this topic of noise coming before council is that maybe there would be some uniqueness to different park areas around Fort Saskatchewan. Perhaps like a bylaw would be applied accordingly in different different circumstances and use for that park to appropriate parks. Because I would say the River Valley corridor is very distinct from other neighborhood parks, for example. And I'm not really advocating for any specific activity or change to be done in parks, but is there merit to that way of thinking? I see like West River's Edge, but the stormwater the trout pond has its own section in here, but could there be a distinction between residential parks with playgrounds and perhaps the River Valley area for even the time that you're allowed to use that park? I would think midnight midnight swinging blizzard aside, there might be, you know, a certain level of community benefit to allow a more relaxed bylaw for use in those areas. I don't know. It's just a question of if you've thought of this and maybe if it has applicability in the fort, you could see the merits of it.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Nguyen, I wouldn't necessarily say that was something that we considered for a bylaw. Sometimes it's ease if it's the same across the board versus you could do it here but not here. A lot of the bylaw concerns and Ben can talk to that more specifically, is just in regards to complaint based. So if somebody's rowdy in a park after hours, for instance, it would be a matter of, you know, calling bylaw, the RCMP to enforce noise, versus if somebody was sitting in a park or passing through and quietly, you know, sitting there or swinging and wasn't disturbing anybody.
Yeah, this is really discretionary on bylaws, and I have confidence that you're gonna you use that judgment when you see things occurring. Obviously, if someone's doing destructive or using alcohol or substances, things of that nature, it needs to be enforced outside of hours. But yeah, okay, well that's good enough for me right now.
Okay, good. All right, I'm back. So under your definitions, you have a definition for micromobility as per the Traffic Act. So my question is, do you also need to have a definition for mobility devices, same as what's in the Traffic Act, so that they're consistent? Because the Traffic Act lists both of them. This one only lists one. 2.24. Yep.
Through to Councillor Katcher, I believe may need a definition for it. It was mobility aid that you're questioning. I'd have to go back and check our traffic bylaw to see what that definition is. But if it is defined within the traffic bylaw, then probably should also be defined within the parkland.
Yeah, I went through and double checked it, and it had one for both because they're different. So I thought maybe this one requires that as well. Under section 2.28, it really defines park manager. So I'm just curious because under most of our bylaws, the CAO is the one who is in charge of everything or his delegate. So I'm just curious why we would specify parks manager, because the parks manager would be the delegate of the CAO.
We will take that back. Well, noted. We did have this reviewed, but specifically, I can't comment on that right at this time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of them do. And then under section 14, it's city manager powers. So I don't know. I didn't go in and look at a bunch of other bylaws, but I'm not certain that we've actually listed city manager powers, because most of this bylaw, as you read it, it says unless a permit is provided by the city manager or the CAO. So to me, it kind of contradicts itself why we would have so much of this written in here about his powers. Although he does have superpowers, I think I'm just not sure that, you know, he has a city manager bylaw that we give him certain authority to do things. And then throughout this, it says, or unless a permit is issued by the city manager or his delegate. So just questioning that one. And then in section 14.1.11, you've got wadding instead of wading. It's just a little typo. Okay. I'll go back to Councillor Blizzard and then I'll come back.
I think I can finish mine here, although there's 3 points that kind of tie together. So actually I put down 5.2 5.21, removing a tree carries a $500 fine. But in looking it over, a lot of them are 250 or 500, except starting a fire during a fire ban. I would think would want that higher too, because that could be one of the most dangerous things. You know, we have a fire ban and they start a fire, and what if it gets out of control? There's a reason for a fire ban, whether conditions are super dry. Why is that only 150 when every other little thing on here is more than that? So again, something to look at.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, I can actually answer that one. When we went through these, a lot of these offenses are similar in structure to other City of Fort Saskatchewan bylaws, and we have a fire bylaw that does have this offense in it as well. So we matched the offense within the fire bylaw to this bylaw.
Okay, something to think about next time fees and charges come before us to maybe up that. Yeah. Okay, and one more, because that was one question. 5.28.2, I think it was here, which is sell, display, or distribute goods and services. You know, I think it was last summer, I came across quite a few times at West River's Edge a church group that had a display and was handing out pamphlets. To me, that would fall under that category. Is that correct? Because, you know, maybe they need to be informed then, or maybe it doesn't fall under that. They're not selling it, but it doesn't say only selling. It's sell, display, or distribute.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard. So in that section 5.28, while in a park, no person shall sell, display, or distribute any goods or services, distribute any handbills or circulars, or conduct any business or commercial venture unless otherwise permitted.
Right, so that would include this group that was handing out church flyers, really.
Unless otherwise permitted.
Oh, so they may have gotten a permit for it? Okay, something to ask. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm back. So back into your fire ban stuff, 5.23, where it says that no person shall start a fire in a park when a fire ban is in place, and then it drops down and it talks about the fire services bylaw. But I guess my question on this one really is, shouldn't it just be no person shall start a fire in a park, period, without a permit, as per the fire services bylaw?
To the chair, while you're not incorrect, we do also have publicly available fire pits in Turner Park with wood that is available for people to go down there and have a campfire if they would like to.
So then you could just make it, with the exception of areas approved such as West River's Edge Pavilion or Turner Park Shelter. I mean, I read this and I felt like it just got really complex, because we do have the fire bylaw through fire services, and it just feels to me like when you say, oh, you won't start a fire when there's a fire ban. Well, I think common sense often doesn't prevail, and I think we need to be a little more specific. That's where I would come through on that one. So that's just my comments on that. So it isn't the same, okay? And let's see, 5.6, just let me scroll to 5.6. No, I can't even, let's see, while in a park, no person shall, and I guess the question that I have, and I can't even see it on here now, but shouldn't it be no person in a park shall do all of these things except with a permit? I think probably a little more being specific about permits once again.
Sorry, in
well, I wrote down 5.6, but I can't, or it must be, I'll have to find it and text it to you. It must be us. Oh, there, just a second. Here we are. There it is. It is in 5.6. It says, while in a park, no person shall climb on any building, structure, equipment, blah, 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 build or erect permanent temporary structures, place or set up permanent except with a permit as designated site in a campground for the purpose of camping. It just felt clunky. Like the section just felt clunky.
To the chair, we can definitely take that back, and we can talk about it and reorganize it before we come back for with the final draft.
Yeah, because because then you get into that, and then you get into, well, if you're in Legacy Park, you're putting up structures for events. If you're in different events, you're putting up structures in all the parks and things like that. So, and they have to have permits in order to do that. I just think it would make it less clunky. So. I think that's about it. Okay, and we're not allowing any more balloons to be released. Okay. Oh, planting a tree on public lands. That includes memorial trees, or is, because you don't talk about memorial trees at all?
To the chair, no, that's a separate program. So that people are not allowed to plant a tree on public land. If they wish to plant a memorial tree, they'll have to come through the park services and get permission and go through our program to do that.
Okay. Okay, I'm just scrolling through. I think that's good. Yeah, and I found the water body one. Oh, I'm sorry, there's other people in line again. Sorry, you should have just point of ordered me. Yeah, I'll come back. Mayor Macon?
My question is actually more to you, Councillor Ketcher, just on your question about fires in parks. I know it's in a different place in here, but under 5.22, it says no person shall make a fire in the park unless the person makes the fire with firewood in fireplace, fire pit, or other fire receptacle provided by the city for that purpose. Or to my other concern about having a natural gas fire pit. So does that alleviate your concern, or should that be tied to the other part that you were questioning?
I think it needs to be tied to it.
Yeah, because it's in two different places, so it can be hard to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Nguyen?
I did read the balloons earlier. Very steep fines. 2 balloons, that's, I think you're out $1,500. So let that be known on the public record. Wow. I know there was that incident, I think, in San Francisco or something, which wasn't good, but that was in the millions. But I digress. But it made me think about drones. Are there any provisions of drones, or did I just miss them? I don't know if we need to, if it's an issue, if people are allowed to do that. I thought, I don't have one, but there's airspace stuff that is supposed to be applied or licensed when you have a drone flying around, and it seems like people are losing them constantly. So I'd assume that they're flying them in big open spaces, but is that something I missed? I guess that's my question first.
Through the chair to Councillor Noya, note you're correct. It's not within this draft of the Parkland bylaw, and it is something that we did talk about, and it was up for consideration. There are federal regulations in place that deal with whether you need a license to operate a drone, depending on the size or weight, where you can operate your drone, where you cannot operate your drone. We felt those were fairly sufficient at a federal level. And then along with that, from a park services standpoint, we had no grounds to stand on to say we have an issue or there's an issue being caused by drones. So we didn't feel it was necessary to include it within this Parkland bylaw. However, with discussions with Authenticity, we did retain some information that we have on hand should the need to incorporate it into this bylaw or another bylaw come up in the future.
Okay, great. Yeah, good to know. Thank you for that. Perfect.
Okay, I'm almost done. Just on section 8 where it talks about vehicles. So under the micromobility one, you do bring in the Traffic Act, but under the general provision of this where it talks about parking vehicles on roadways, on trails, doesn't that still fall within the Traffic Act? Because it says on 8.1.3, it says park a vehicle on a park roadway in a park where prohibited by a traffic control device. So that section I'm thinking it also needs to refer to your traffic act because your traffic act encompasses trails, parking lots, if I'm correct, sidewalks, if I'm correct. So that should be encompassed within this one or cross-referenced.
Through the chair, correct. It could be cross-referenced.
Okay, good. I'm done. All right. Thank you for all your work on that. I know doing these ones are a massive amount of work when it comes to doing them. I've worked on them in the past. Look forward to having the final version come forward. So thank you very much and good luck on the few tweaks. It wasn't that bad. All right. Okay. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to go. It's been a long day. Any member inquiries? No, you're not welcome to leave. You must stay. Are there any, Mayor Macon?
Thank you. Two that are slightly related to each other, because I do a lot of walking, is that there's a lot of garbage around the community from the winter thaw. And I'm just wondering if there are any programs that we currently use outside of the downtown cleanup that get groups to come in and clean up different areas. You don't have to answer this right now. That's what I'm looking for. Or if we've had in the past any kind of programs like that where we encourage community groups to take different areas. And the other one was just that walking in the other day, I noticed that our beautiful Indigenous crosswalk out just outside of City Hall is gotten some wear and tear from the winter rocks. I'm just wondering if we had plans to have them come back and fix that up nicely because it was looking pretty chipped up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Randawa, questions?
From what the assessment presentations today, I believe Mike Krim mentioned he's been with the city since '97. I was just wondering, is it possible for council to get information on like what other substantial contracts have existed with the same party for like a substantial amount of time? I think that'd just be interesting from a pure procurement perspective.
Okay. Mr. Fleming?
Yeah, through the chair, we'll take a look at that. I don't know how easily we can recall. I don't know if we have like a database of contracts, but I'm sure if I pull the directors, we can try and figure out if there is anything out there that's of a longer term nature like that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no other questions, I'll take a motion to go into closed session for the purposes under access to information. Anybody? Mayor Macon?
I'll make the motion that we move in camera for items covered under ATIA.
Thank you. The motion is closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. We'll just take 5 minutes to get everybody reorganized.